Chapter 5178. With that, Huang Mingxiang pulled Fairy Hong Xia's hand and said with a smile, "Let's go, sister. Let's lead the disciples to defend against the enemy. I'd like to see which sword cultivator is so bold to attack my Sky Patrol city." Alright. Fairy Hong Xia looked at Huang Mingxiang's carefree manner and secretly scolded herself for being suspicious. She smiled and said, "Sister will fight a bloody battle with you today." Then, Fairy Hong Xia and Huang Mingxiang led the few disciples from the Kai and Huang clan to the north gate of Sky Patrol City. Yi Shixiang and Yun Guichong looked at each other with smiles on their faces. Yi Shixiang stole a glance at Yu Tong. Although Yu Tong was facing the direction where Fairy Hong Xia and the rest disappeared, his lips were moving slightly as if he was transmitting a message. Yi Shixiang reminded him, "Fellow Taoist Yu, Fairy Hong Xia and fellow Taoist Huang have already left. This is what it means to be a woman who is not inferior to a man. We can't let others look down on us." Yu Tong stopped transmitting his message and looked at Yi Shixiang with a smile. "Fellow Taoist Yun and I have to work hard. We can't even compare to that small half." "Ha!" Yi Shixiang laughed even louder. He moved his body and chased after Fairy Hong Xia while shouting, "Yes, you have to work hard. Fellow Taoist Yu, please." Yun Guichong raised his hand and invited Yu Tong to go first. Yu Tong smiled and said, "Let's go together." Alright. Yun Guichong nodded. The two of them also led their disciples and followed behind Yi Shixiang. After the Yun and Yu clan disciples left, the other Yi clan disciples followed behind. With the Sword Master token, Yi Shixiang could easily control the sword cultivators at the north gate of Sky Patrol City. He first understood the specific situation and said to the sword cultivator guarding the north gate of Sky Patrol City, "Sword Master Yi thinks highly of me and I've accepted the task of guarding the north gate of Sky Patrol City. But don't worry, I know my limits and will definitely not interfere with your defensive sword formation. I just want you to hand over the swordsmen outside the defensive sword formation to me. I'll lead them to set up the formation outside Sky Patrol City and have a life and death battle with the enemy cultivators surrounding the city." The patrolling sword sect's disciple guarding the northern gate was even more straightforward and nimble. After hearing Yi Shixiang's words, he immediately sent out the order. Approximately several thousand sword cultivators flew over from various places to await Yi Shixiang's orders. Of course, Yi Shixiang knew that the north side of Sky Patrol City would not only have a few sword cultivators, but he did not ask too much. He also led the thousands of sword cultivators and Yi clan disciples out of Sky Patrol City. After flying for more than 10 miles and seeing that they were about to pass by several mountain peaks, Yun Jiechong hurriedly transmitted a message to Yi Shixiang to stop. Yi Shixiang looked meaningfully at the mountains below him that looked like monsters that were accumulating power. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He stopped and ordered everyone to stop as well. "Everyone!" Yi Shixiang pretended to release his divine sense and looked around before he said, "My celestial city is easy to defend and hard to attack. During the Great Sword Dao War back then, my sword cultivators spent a lot of effort to take over Celestial City. So today, if we were in your shoes, we definitely can't let the same thing happen again. We must kill the enemy outside the sword formation." Young Lord Yi, the leader of the sword cultivators, hesitated for a moment before he said, "I don't know if you've received the message, but there are probably hundreds of thousands of enemy cultivators outside the northern gate of Sky Patrol City. We're only several thousand sword cultivators. How can we be their match? 10 million ants are coming to ambush Sky Patrol City. Will you be afraid?" Yi Shixiang glanced at the sword cultivator and asked. The sword cultivator was stunned and shook his head. "I won't be afraid even if there are 10 times more ants, let alone 10 million. Will you be afraid if there are 1,000,000 sword cultivators?" Yi Shixiang continued to ask. 1,000,000. The sword cultivator hesitated for a moment before he answered, "Although I feel that I can definitely kill my way out of 1,000,000 sword cultivators, 1,000,000 is too many. I dare not estimate. What if we accompany you to face 1,000,000 sword cultivators?" Yi Shixiang asked loudly. "I'm not afraid. The sword cultivator suddenly understood something and shouted back. If young lord and all of you are here, how can I be afraid? That's right. Yi Shixiang raised his hand and pointed into the distance. I'm not afraid to tell you that the sword cultivators approaching from there are at most at the level of drawing sword. No matter how many of them there are, how can they break through Sky Patrol City? I'm still young and have many pleasures to enjoy. If it's dangerous to come out of Sky Patrol City, how can I risk my life to come out? Don't worry, I have my Yi clan's secret sword formation here. You just have to follow the sword formation and wait to kill the enemy cultivators and perform meritorious deeds for Sky Patrol City, right? Great. The sword cultivator was overjoyed and cupped his hands. We'll be counting on you, young lord. Yi Shixiang nodded and took out a dozen jade slips and handed them to the sword cultivator. This is the method to set up the formation. Fellow Taoist, please distribute it to the team leaders. We'll quickly study it and prepare to set up the formation. Although Yi Shixiang's words were very encouraging, the Sky Patrol Sword Sect's disciples did not fully believe him. However, since Yi Shixiang, as the Yi clan's young lord, was going to face the enemy cultivators here, they had no reason to not come. Moreover, they believed Yi Shixiang's words. The enemy cultivators must be low-level disciples. Otherwise, it would be impossible for there to be such a shocking number. While the group of sword cultivators were studying the sword formation, Yi Shixiang also gave a few jade slips to Fairy Hongxia, Huang Mengxiang, Yu Tong, Yun Jichong, and the others. After a meal, everyone finished reading. Yi Shixiang said in a low voice, "Everyone, this formation is divided into 2 layers, the inner and outer formation. We have fewer people, so we'll gather in the inner formation. The sword cultivators of Sky Patrol City will be scattered in the outer formation. Of course, the number of sword cultivators in the inner formation cannot be too small. We need to draw out nearly 1,000 sword cultivators from Sky Patrol City and transfer them into the inner formation. However, these sword cultivators cannot be led by us. They must be led by the patriarchs. Firstly, it can increase the power of the inner formation. Secondly, it can protect the patriarchs. What do you all think?" At this point, Yi Shixiang hesitated for a moment. He flicked his 10 fingers and a simple sword formation was set up. Yi Shixiang hurriedly said, "Most importantly, if there's an opportunity during the battle, you all can mobilize these sword cultivators to face the enemy cultivators. Let them hold the enemy cultivators back while you all can easily escape." "Young Lord Yi." Huang Mingxiang's eyes were filled with surprise as he cried out, "You really move me. If I didn't have someone else in my heart, I would definitely treat you as my ideal Dao companion." Fairy Hongxia's heart shuddered for no reason. Yi Shixiang also didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he waved his hand and said, "Forget it. I'll just be the shorty in your eyes. I already have someone in my heart." As he spoke, Yi Shixiang actually glanced at Fairy Hongxia without any scruples. Fairy Hongxia was a little distracted and didn't seem to notice it. On the contrary, when Xiao Mao saw the desire in Yi Shixiang's eyes, he couldn't help but be alarmed and secretly knew that things weren't looking good. "Thank goodness, thank goodness." Huang Mingxiang clapped his hands in relief and said, "I didn't hurt anyone." Yi Shixiang shook his head helplessly and removed the simple and crude sword formation. He said, "I believe everyone has already seen the sword formation. Now, I will be bold enough to assign the locations that the patriarchs will guard." Yu Tong nodded and said, "Young Lord Yi, please. After all, this is the Yi clan sword formation." "Yes, young Lord Yi, please quickly say it." Huang Mingxiang's voice was so sweet that it made Yi Shixiang's hair stand on end. Yi Shixiang perked up and pointed out the details of the sword formation and the locations that the 5 patriarchs will guard. Finally, he specially looked at Yun Guichong and said, "Fellow Taoist Yun, is there anything you don't understand?" Everything that Yi Shixiang said was naturally taught by Yun Guichong. How could he have any doubts? However, Yun Guichong still pretended to ask a few questions. Then, Yi Shixiang looked at Yu Tong and said meaningfully, "Fellow Taoist Yu, is there anything else you want to ask?" He. When Yu Tong saw that Yi Shixiang immediately asked him after Yun Guichong, he already had some understanding in his heart. He smiled and said, I don't have any special questions. However, when I look at this sword formation, the entire formation looks like a plum blossom in the snow with 5 petals. These 5 petals floating in the air will certainly be beautiful, but if it's used to kill enemies, it will appear to have no foundation. I wonder where the center of this sword formation will be located? Yi Shixiang pretended to be astonished and looked at Yutong. He gave him a thumbs up and said, I really didn't expect fellow Taoist you to be a formation expert. When ordinary sword cultivators see my Yi clan sword formation, they would think that these 5 sword petals are 5 different formation cores. They can't tell at all. Since it's shaped like a plum blossom, it should have a root. As he spoke, Yi Shixiang pointed at a mountain peak not far away and said with a smile, that place. I've already looked at it earlier. That place is the best place to be the foundation of the sword formation. When Yun Guichong heard this, he revealed a faint smile. That mountain peak was where he and Yu Tong had deliberately set up the 4-spirit blood curse. Yun Guichong couldn't help but glance at Yu Tong. Because the materials needed to set up the 4-spirit blood curse were extremely rare, the Yun clan and Yu clan had spent a lot of effort to gather them. As for setting up the formation, although it looked simple, it was troublesome because they didn't know where to set up the formation in order to lure Fairy Wuxia into the formation. Previously, the two of them had also discussed capturing her by force. However, just as Yutong said, that kind of bloodline would be greatly reduced and wouldn't be able to sanctify their bloodline. That was why they chose to cooperate with the Yi clan. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, tip, and thank you for all forms of support. Thanks to fellow Taoists like Benbin, Rogue Hero, Kai Kai in the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Theblisky 1, Yong Chang, Honghua, Heaven-Defying Radish, Dao Sovereign, Deep Breath, Ferlin, Su Ji, and other fellow Taoists for their tips. Today, I'll add more chapters for all of you. At the same time, I'd like to thank everyone who follows the path of spirit cultivation. Fellow Taoists' strong support and tireless reading gave me the strength to write. Chapter 5179. The Sky Patrol City was designated by the Yi clan. Although Yun Guichong did not know why the Yi clan designated the Sky Patrol City, he knew that it was extremely difficult to set up the 4 spirits blood curse under the nose of a sword cultivator outside the Sky Patrol City. He and Yu Tong looked all around Sky Patrol City, but they did not find a suitable place. The Sky Patrol City was easy to defend and difficult to attack. It was surrounded by snow and abyss, covered with ice and snow. It was not a suitable place to set up the 4 spirits blood curse. However, just when the two of them were at their wits' end, Yun Jiechong thought of the Tianyi Cyan light sword formation set up by the sword cultivators during the Great War of the Sword Principles. Hence, he whimsically suggested that Yu Tong explore the vicinity of Sky Inspect City. Sure enough, hard work paid off. They finally found a suitable place outside the north gate of Sky Inspect City. This place was very close to the Sky Patrol City's city wall. It was almost always under the supervision of sword cultivator patrolling disciples. It was extremely difficult to set up the formation. However, Yu Tong and Yun Guichong were even more excited when they saw this. The more difficult it was, the less likely the Yi clan would find out about their purpose and spoil their plans. Hence, the seemingly simple formation in the end took a lot of effort from Yun Guichong and Yu Tong. However, Yun Guichong said to himself proudly, the most difficult part is over. In another 2 hours, the 4 spirits blood curse can be activated. By then Yu Tong and I will. When he thought of this, a trace of gloom appeared in Yun Guichong's heart again. He glanced at Yu Tong. Although he had been very close to Yu Tong after forming an alliance with him in the Sword Tomb, he had been very close to Yu Tong. In the next 1,000 years, he had also received a lot of guidance from Yu Tong and gained a lot of benefits. It could be said that without Yu Tong, Yun Guichong would not be able to conceive a baby. However, Yun Guichong always had a suspicion that he might be used by Yu Tong. If that was the case, Yun Guichong had no basis at all. Whether it was setting up the formation or the choice of location, it was all decided by him. He and Yu Tong set up the formation together. Most of the time, he even set it up himself. Yun Guichong had secretly tried to set up the Four Spirits blood curse. All the effects were exactly the same as what Yu Tong said. All the abnormalities of the blood curse were the same as what Yu Tong said. He had no reason to doubt Yu Tong. Let's fight. Yun Guichong secretly clenched his teeth. This is an opportunity. If I can sanctify the true spirit bloodline to the Holy Spirit bloodline, not only will I be able to achieve the spirit severing stage, but even the fusion stage will not be a dream. While Yun Jiechong was pondering, Yi Shixiang also asked Fairy Hong Xia and Huang Mingxiang. At this moment, the disciples of the mountain patrolling Sword Gate had also flown over. Yi Shixiang explained the reason why the sword cultivators were transferred to the inner formation. The group leaders did not have any objections and respectively sent 300 sword cultivator disciples to the Kai, Yu, Yun, and Huang families. After all, they also understood the sword array and knew about the inner array. These aristocratic families had too few people. Furthermore, with sword cultivators around these aristocratic families, they could also feel safe. In the end, Yi Shixiang had the demeanor of a great general and divided the remaining several thousand sword cultivators into 5 groups, which corresponded to the 5 influential families in the inner formation. Woo-woo! Just as Yi Shixiang finished distributing the disciples, he heard a gust of chilly wind mixed with broken sword intent gushing out from the distant horizon. These sword intents broke through the wind and snow and hit the cloudy sky. Not only did hundreds of whirlpools appear in the sky, even the mountain peaks near the sky patrolling city trembled slightly. Immediately, in the vast land, layers of sword chi gradually emerged. These sword chi were like waves in the depths of the sea, rising from afar and spreading towards the sky patrolling city. In front of these waves, there were dozens or even hundreds of sword cultivators urging their sword lights. They were like seagulls chasing after the tide, soaring wantonly and unyieldingly. Yi Shixiang's gaze swept across and immediately ordered, "Everyone, the enemy cultivators are approaching. The patrolling disciples of the sky patrolling city should also return. Let's quickly set up the formation." Yes. Thousands of sword cultivators from the sky patrolling city and hundreds of disciples from the 5 influential families followed the previous discussion and arrangement. They seemed to be in a hurry, but they also flew in an orderly manner. At the same time, in other places of the sky patrolling city, more sword cultivator disciples could be seen flying out of the sky patrolling city. Just like Yi Shixiang's arrangement, they formed different sword formations. Although these sword formations were not linked together, as the sword intent spread, they had already completely covered the outside of the sky patrolling city. "Young lord." Seeing that the sword formation was about to be completed, Xiao Mao suddenly flew over and said in a low voice, "I invited Fairy Hong Xia here. If anything happens to her in the battle, I won't be able to live with myself. Therefore, I want to go into the Kai family's sword formation." Yi Shixiang was not surprised. He glanced at Xiao Mao and said, "I can understand your feelings, but you're not even a nascent soul cultivator. Won't you be causing trouble for them if you go?" "Whether I can protect her or not is up to me," Xiao Mao replied, "but whether I go or not is up to me." "Then go." Yi Shixiang waved his hand and said with a smile, "I can rest assured if you go and protect Fairy Hong Xia." "Thank you, young lord." After Xiao Mao expressed his gratitude, he hurriedly left. Yi Shixiang looked at Xiao Mao's back and a faint smile once again appeared on his lips. In just half a meal's time, the plum blossom-shaped sword formation had already begun to take shape. The sword intent on the inner and outer layers were like plum blossoms in full bloom. One layer after another, it enveloped the surrounding dozens of li and intertwined with the sword intent from other places nearby. Wherever the sword chi covered, the solid ice on the mountain peak began to crack. The previously scattered snowflakes had already disappeared. The sword intent surged into the sky and tore apart the dark clouds bit by bit. Light began to seep through the dark clouds as if the sun would shoot out at any time. But just as everyone was activating the sword chi, Yi Shixiang suddenly frowned and shouted, "Not good." Yu Tong and Yun Jiechong were shocked. They asked almost at the same time, "What's wrong?" Although this sword formation will increase the stability of the sword formation based on whether it's on the mountain peak, the sword formation is slightly far away from the other sword formations. The sword intent won't be able to integrate well with the sword intent of the other sword formations. It's not good for the defense of Sky Patrol City. Yi Shixiang pretended to be serious as he explained. Damn it. Yu Tong and Yun Jiechong cursed at the same time. They looked at each other. Yun Jiechong suppressed the anger in his heart and said softly, "According to young lord, how should we deal with it?" Yi Shixiang smiled and pointed to a mountain peak at the side. "I think that mountain peak is better." Yun Jiechong's expression changed greatly when he heard this. He looked at Yi Shixiang, who was causing trouble, and gritted his teeth in hatred. Unfortunately, Yi Shixiang was the one in charge of the city lord token now. Moreover, Yi Shixiang was right. When the sword formation was here, there were indeed some sword intents that were fused, and there were many places where the sword intent was thin. "Senior Marshal Brother Yu." Yun Jiechong hurriedly transmitted his voice to ask. Yu Tong bit his lips tightly and seemed to be at his wit's end. He opened his mouth and wanted to transmit his voice to Yi Shixiang, but he closed his mouth in the end. Yi Yaotian was currently Yi Shixiang. He could do anything he wanted. Even if Immortal Emissary when blamed him, Nian would push the blame to Yi Shixiang for being insensible. Moreover, Yu Tong really didn't want to ruin his years of hard work. After thinking for a moment, Yu Tong transmitted his voice. "Let's see what happens to Yi Shixiang first. We'll adapt according to the situation. That's the only way." Yun Jiechong was even more furious than Yu Tong, but he also couldn't do anything. Yi Shixiang didn't hide his words from the others, so the other sword cultivators in Sky Patrol City also understood. They didn't have any objections. After Yi Shixiang gave the order, they all flew towards the other mountain peak. The two mountain peaks looked like they were only a few miles apart, but they didn't move an inch. Yun Jiechong's heart was bleeding. "Junior Marshal Brother Yun?" Yu Tong's voice suddenly came quietly. "Quickly get Yun Xiaoying and 2 or 3 other Yun family disciples to come to this Yu." Yun Jiechong was a little stunned. He looked up at Yu Tong, who was not far away from him on his right. At this moment, behind Yu Tong, among the sword cultivators, several Yu family disciples concealed their figures and were flying towards the Yun family where Yun Jiechong was. Among these disciples, Yu Yusong could be seen. Although Yun Jiechong was puzzled, he didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly transmitted his voice and instructed Yun Xiaoying to bring a few disciples to the sword formation where the Yu family disciples were. Yi Shixiang had long been paying attention to the actions of the Yu family and Yun family. He had already seen the movements of these disciples. However, like Yun Jiechong, he was very puzzled. He didn't know what the exchange of these disciples was for. However, since Yi Shixiang had already violated the agreement, and Yun Jiechong and Yu Tong had responded like this, he couldn't say anything else. Unless he really wanted to fall out with them. Since Yi Shixiang didn't say anything, the other sword cultivators naturally wouldn't care. In just the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the entire sword formation had been transferred to a new mountain peak. At this moment, just as Yi Shixiang had said, the sword intent of the sword formation was intertwined with the sword intent of the other sword formations like water and milk, perfectly protecting Sky Patrol City. As for Yun Jiechong, as his eyes turned rapidly, he quietly activated a trace of the true spirit Dharma body's power. He could vaguely feel the power of the blood curse. Although the power of the blood curse was weaker than before, he was finally relieved. Then, he looked at Yu Tong gratefully and transmitted his voice in a low voice. "It's all thanks to Senior Brother Yu, it's nothing." Yu Tong smiled and replied through voice transmission, "I didn't expect the Yi family's young master to change his mind at the last minute. Fortunately, the Ice Phoenix and Vermilion Bird in the Four Spirits blood curse didn't change. It's just that the Silver Tiger and the Flame Dragon swapped places, so the range of the blood curse tilted a little. It's just enough to deal with Yi Shixiang's willfulness. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, bookmark it, and tip it. Thank you for all forms of support. Thank you to Benbin, Hooligan Hero, Kai Kai in the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Feblisky 1, and other fellow Taoists for their tips. Yong Chang, Honghua, Heaven-Defying Radish, Tao Master, Deep Breath, Ferlin, Su Ji, and other fellow Taoists for their tips. Today, I'll add more chapters for you. At the same time, I'd like to thank everyone who follows the path of spirit cultivation. Fellow Taoists, your strong support and tireless reading gave me the strength to write. Chapter 5180. This bastard must be warning us not to mess up his confession to Fairy Hong Xia. Yun Guichong looked coldly at Yi Shixiang and said, I want to see how he's going to suffer. Hee. Yu Tong chuckled, it's already come to this point. Even if he hits a nail on the head, he won't be able to escape from us brothers. Oh, right, junior brother Yun, Yu Xiong went to your place, so we'll have to rely on you to activate the Four Spirits Blood Curse. Be careful when you activate it, don't be too greedy. Yun Guichong no longer had any doubts and hurriedly replied, Senior brother Yu, don't worry. It's still the same as what we discussed earlier. Junior brother will take 30% and senior brother will take 70%. Sigh. Yu Tong sighed, fortune makes fools of people. Junior brother has the initiative, so the person activating the blood curse will take at least 40% of the bloodline power. Even if junior brother doesn't agree, the blood curse won't agree. Yun Guichong was overjoyed, but he still spoke with fear and suggested, how about this, senior brother Yu, why don't junior brother exchange with you? Yu Tong frowned and scolded through voice transmission, Junior brother Yun, you're treating me like an outsider. Yi Shixiang causing trouble is your fortuitous opportunity. If you try your best to make up for it, not only will you lose your fortuitous opportunity, but I will also lose my fortuitous opportunity. Don't say anything more. Wait for me to give you the signal, then activate the Four Spirits Blood Curse. Alright. Yun Guichong knew that he would be unreasonable if he continued to decline, so he agreed through voice transmission. While Yun Guichong was communicating with Yu Tong, the Fortune Gate disciples in the distance had already closed in. Just as Yi Shixiang had said, although there were many Fortune Gate disciples in the Huan country, their strength was weak. Most of them only had nurturing swords and drawing swords, not even an illusory sword could be seen. For a moment, the crowd of sword cultivators calmed down. What are these sword cultivators trying to do? Naturally, Fairy Hong Xia had also seen the situation of the Fortune Gate's disciples. She was also very puzzled. After all, she had foolishly followed Yi Shixiang and the others and caused such a huge commotion. She had no reason to fight with these low-level sword cultivators, right? Fairy Hong Xia turned to Xiao Mao and asked, Junior brother Xiao, what is going on? Of course, Xiao Mao didn't know either. However, he felt uneasy. He reached into his Taoist robe and took out a soul pouch. He said in a low voice, Senior sister, I'm not sure either. However, I feel that there's something fishy about this. Nonsense, do I need you to tell me that? I know that too. Fairy Hong Xia glared at him and said, the expressions of Yi Shixiang and the Sky Patrol City Guards didn't seem fake. Fairy Hong Xia. Fairy Hong Xia. All of a sudden, the Fortune Gate disciples closest to the sword formation were in an uproar. Many of them pointed at Fairy Hong Xia and shouted, quickly report to the gate chief. Immediately after, a few disciples activated their bodies and flew to the south of Sky Patrol City using either sword lights or flying techniques. Fairy Hong Xia was not the only one who was dumbfounded. Even Xiao Mao, who was beside her, and Huang Mingxiang, who was separated by the Yi family, were dumbfounded. Everyone knew that the enemy cultivators besieging the Sky Patrol City must have something to do with Fairy Hong Xia. While Fairy Hong Xia and the others were dumbfounded, on a mountain peak covered in ice to the south of Sky Patrol City, more than 10 Golden Core cultivators frowned as they looked at the sword formation set up by the Sky Patrol City swordsmen. They looked at each other and all of them looked at a third-grade illusory sword cultivator in the middle. This third-grade illusory sword cultivator was none other than Zhong Haoran. Zhong Haoran's wrinkled face did not show any abnormality. He looked at the seemingly sparse sword formation in the distance and then turned his head to look at the Fortune Gate disciples on his left. A sense of dejection and helplessness rose from the bottom of his heart. His lofty ambitions had long fallen from the 9 layers of clouds to solid ground. Everyone. Zhong Haoren took a deep breath and looked at the Golden Core sect masters on his left and said, "What do you all think?" Everyone looked at each other and looked at each other. Their hearts were the same as Zhong Haoren's. The sword formation's sword intent was colder than the ice and snow around Sky Patrol City. It had long cooled the fire in their hearts and even turned it into ice. A few days ago, they were all talking at once, excitedly discussing their dreams and plans. In front of Ru Shi's strength, they had already begun to shatter. They saw the cruel side of reality after all. Sect Master Wang? Zhong Haoren's gaze fell on Wang Jianxing of the Chu Hong sect and asked indifferently, "That day, Sect Master Wang insisted on tearing apart the Sky Patrol City's defensive sword formation with his peak combat strength. Moreover, we have also agreed that whoever can tear apart the sword formation first will be appointed as the Alliance Master of the Fortune Immortal Alliance." Wang Jianxing was a tall middle-stage gold core cultivator. He was dressed in a sapphire blue military uniform and looked majestic. However, the expression on his face did not match his military uniform. Awkwardness and shock were all over his face. He opened his mouth and said in a low voice, "This? I didn't expect that they would dare to set up a sword formation outside Sky Patrol City when there are not many sword cultivator disciples in Sky Patrol City. Why is it not possible?" A thin and short middle-stage golden core cultivator immediately said coldly, "That day, I've already said that sword cultivators cultivate an indomitable and unyielding sword intent. How can they hide in the Sky Patrol City and not come out? Even if they give up Sky Patrol City, they will still fight with us." Su Zhonglin. Wang Jianxing was unhappy and growled, "I admit that you said that, but did you insist? Did you have any opinions? All you did was touch your lips and say a few words. Are you trying to claim credit for it now? If you can get the Alliance Master of the Fortune Immortal Alliance with just a few words, we will go back now. Why don't we invite a scholar over?" "Shut up." A bell-like voice exploded in everyone's ears like thunder. Whether it was Wang Jianxing or Su Zhonglin, both shrunk their necks and did not dare to say anything. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice. It was an old man with a head full of white hair. His thick eyebrows were vertical, and his gaze was like lightning as he looked at the two of them. He said, "Since we have already discussed to officially form the Creation Immortal Alliance, no matter who is the leader, we are already allies. Even the word allies has widened the distance between us. We are all from the Fortune Gate that worships Taoist Shao as the sect master. We are actually brothers. In this situation, you don't want to join forces to attack the enemy, but you complain about each other. If the disciples hear this, what will they think?" Zhong Haoren was not surprised by the old man's reprimand. He had a smile on his face as he looked at the sect master of the Burning Crane Guild named Zhao Ming. Zhao Ming was a late-stage golden core cultivator and was the strongest among the group of Dao cultivator sect masters. He was also the strongest contender for the position of Fortune Immortal Alliance's chief. "Sect Master Zhao?" Heavenly Competition Pavilion's Sect Master Zhuahong, an early-stage golden core middle-aged man, said respectfully, "I don't blame you for arguing with each other. Even when I saw the sword cultivator's sword formation, I couldn't help but feel a chill in my heart. I felt that they were unrivaled." After Zhuahong finished speaking, a square-faced middle-aged man also said, "Fellow Taoist Zhui is right. This Su also feels the same. My fishing island was built relatively late, and this Su doesn't have any special methods. Although the number of people in the sect has increased rapidly in the past few hundred years, compared to these well-trained sword cultivators, this Su feels that." At this point, the middle-aged man didn't continue speaking. Zhao Ming glanced at the slightly elegant middle-aged man and asked indifferently, "Su Chong, are you trying to say that the disciples of your fishing island are a motley crew compared to these sword cultivators?" Su Chong's face turned red. He looked at the few cultivators on his left and wanted to deny it. However, he steeled his heart and simply replied, "Reporting to Senior Zhao, this Su indeed has such thoughts. Of course, this is only my opinion of the disciples of my fishing island. It doesn't include all of you." Hee hee. Zhao Ming smiled slightly and said, This old man has the same thoughts as you. Not only do I feel that the disciples of my Burning Crane Union are a motley crew, but I also feel that all the disciples of the Creation Immortal Alliance are a motley crew. Of course, there were also people like Wu Cheng from the Hui Tong Pavilion who were unconvinced. However, when they saw that even Zhong Haoren didn't speak, they naturally closed their mouths and listened to Zhao Ming's explanation. Sect Master Zhong? Zhao Ming cupped his hands at Zhong Haoren and said, "Please don't blame this Zhao for being blunt." Zhong Haoren smiled and said, "Sect Master Zhao, you don't have to be like this. This Zhong has already discussed your thoughts with Yun Shu and the others. You can just say it." Good. Zhao Ming nodded and raised his hand to point at the sword cultivators in the distance and said, "Everyone, what you see is actually not thousands of sword cultivator disciples from the Sky Patrol City. It's actually the foundation of the sword cultivators of the Hung country for hundreds of thousands of years. The Sword Dao Great War back then wasn't a fierce battle between a few sword sects and a few Dao cultivator sections. In fact, it was a collision between the foundation of our Dao cultivators and the foundation of sword cultivators. How long has it been since our Fortune Gate was founded? It's only been a few hundred years. How can it be a match for the foundation of sword cultivators who have a foundation of 1,000,000 years? Back then, when the Heavenly Demon Sect was first founded, their strength far surpassed the Black Heaven Sect in the eyes of others. But in the end, didn't they still suffer a crushing defeat? Of course, although the Heavenly Demon Sect suffered a crushing defeat, they actually won. Later on, the Heavenly Demon Sect on the Dawn Rain continent was unparalleled in the limelight and directly created the third largest force today. Today, what our Fortune Gate needs to do is to learn from the Sword Cultivators and the Heavenly Demon Sect. We need to grow through battles and experience through blood and fire. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Thank you to Benbin, Rogue Hero, Kai Kai in the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Feblusky 1, and other cultivators for taking the lead. Yong Chang, Honghua, Heaven-Defying Radish, Dao Sovereign, Deep Breath, Ferlin, Su Ji, and other cultivators for their rewards. Today, I'll add more chapters for all of you. At the same time, I'd also like to thank everyone who follows the path of spirit cultivation. Fellow cultivators' strong support and tireless reading gave me the strength to write. Chapter 5181. The more Zhao Ming spoke, the more eloquent he became. Zhong Haoren maintained a smile on his face, but he was getting more and more anxious. He looked to the left and sent a voice transmission to Zhong Zhan. "Zhong Zhan, did you find anything out of place?" Zhong Zhan had been standing at the back of the group, but when he heard Zhong Haoren's question, he hurriedly replied, "Reporting to Martial Uncle, I didn't find anything out of place. Moreover, after our discussion, I sent more people to watch the places we passed by to see if there are any ambushes. But until now, there has been no news." "What about Yunshu?" Zhong Haoren glanced at Fei Yunshu on the other side, still asking Zhong Zhan through voice transmission. Zhong Zhan understood Zhong Haoren's painstaking efforts and smiled. "Yunshu has been in contact with me." According to his voice transmission, his disciples also didn't find anything out of place. Even the disciples he sent out on behalf of Martial Uncle didn't find anything out of place. AI. Zhong Haoren sighed. He couldn't help but turn to look at the endless snowfield behind him and said, "This old man has tested all the Fortune Gate's gate masters. The first gate master's decree was definitely not issued by any of them. Therefore, there must be someone behind us. What this person wants to do, shouldn't it be obvious by now? But even though we know there are some traps behind us, we can't see anything." "Perhaps there is no such person." Zhong Zhan replied indifferently, "This is merely a desire for power. Didn't you see?" During the discussion, all the gate masters were excited, feeling that Martial Uncle's gate master's decree spoke their minds. Everyone wants to turn the Fortune Gate into the #1 sect on the Dawn Rain mainland. That's exactly why this old man didn't dare to tell the truth. Zhong Haoren nodded. They have been blinded by their hot-bloodedness, they definitely won't believe it. Who knows, there might be internal strife during the discussion, rather than letting them go to the Sky Patrol City. But the problem is, there's no problem. The most likely scenario is being attacked by sword cultivators. Zhong Zhan didn't think much of it. He shrugged and replied, the worst outcome is that our Fortune Gate is being plotted against and destroyed. The current Fortune Immortal Alliance is in a state of disunity. Where is the Fortune Gate in our hearts? If that was the case, he would rather die in glory than live in dishonor. Moreover, with our Fortune Gate's reputation, I'm sure many sects in the Three Kingdoms have already heard of our Fortune Gate's name. They've already sent their disciples to wait in places where we can't detect them, waiting to be fishermen. Hearing this, Zhong Haoran couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He almost cried out involuntarily and looked up at the sword formation in the distance. What happened? Zhao Ming was clearly displeased. He stopped talking and frowned as he looked at Zhong Haoran and asked, Sect Master Zhong, have you discovered anything? Everyone. Zhong Haoran took a deep breath and pointed at the sword formation in the distance as well as the snowfield that was shrouded in sword essence. He asked, I've never participated in the great battle of Dao Sword or even a large-scale battle. However, no matter how I look at the sword formation set up by the Sky Patrol City, I feel that it's very simple and crude. The sword essence of the sword formation is sharp, but the sword essence is like the quills of a hedgehog. It's the sharpness of the sword formation itself, but it's not really integrated. Could it be that the sword cultivators of the Sky Patrol City did not receive the news that our Fortune Gate was coming to the Sky Patrol City in advance? They only found out today and reacted hastily. Is that why they're in such a sorry state? How is that possible? Zhao Ming sneered. Sect Master Zhong has already sent the Fortune Gate's summoning order to us. Although the summoning order's transmission is considered secretive, it's not a secret in the eyes of the big sections. They must have seen the contents of the summoning order and know our plans. If the Dao cultivators know, how can the Sky Patrol City not know? Even the Heng country's sword cultivators will know soon. We were in such a hurry and did not act in advance according to the previous plan because we were afraid that the Heng country's sword cultivators would find out. Sect Master Zhao. An elegant middle-stage gold-core old man spoke. This old man's face was filled with caution as he said in a low voice, I also feel that it's a little strange. Zhao Ming looked at the sect master of the Swallow-Seeking Mountain Manor named Cheng Jizi and asked curiously, Sect Master Cheng, what did you find? Everyone. Cheng Jizi did not directly answer Zhao Ming's question. Instead, he looked at the crowd and said, Perhaps my cultivation level is not the highest, but my Swallow-Seeking Mountain Manor is the biggest branch in the Fortune Immortal Alliance. Because the Swallow-Seeking Mountain Manor's name is somewhat similar to the Xuanyan schools, it was often attacked by the Xuanyan school. Therefore, I have some experience in fighting. To be honest, I don't have much hope in besieging the Sky Patrol City. After all, this is the Sky Patrol City. The Heng country's sword cultivators place great importance on it. You may have other ideas, but I'm just here to take advantage of the situation and watch the show. If any sword cultivators or sword cultivators come out, I'll be the first to prepare to escape. I'm sure many of you have the same idea as me, right? I just want to use this siege to improve my reputation and broaden my knowledge. If there's any trouble, I'll run away. At this point, Cheng Jizi's voice was a little high-pitched. He raised his hand and pointed at the sword formation in the distance, as well as the Sky Patrol City that was overflowing with sword chi. He said, But look at the situation in front of you again. How is it what we thought? Not only did the sword Xiao from Sky Patrol City not send out the illusory sword Xiao who was guarding the city to shout at us, but they didn't even let us say our purpose of coming here. They immediately sent out a battle formation to meet us. This is obviously a bloody battle. Although we have many disciples in the Fortune Immortal Alliance, how can we be a match for these sword cultivators? Cheng Jizi's words immediately tore apart everyone's pretense of being strong, and everyone fell silent. These words were their true thoughts. What they said earlier about tearing apart the sword formation and fighting a bloody battle with the sword cultivators was just a claptrap. They knew their own strength better than anyone else. The Sky Patrol City was so important. In the Sword Dao War, the sword cultivators only managed to seize the Sky Patrol City in the second stage. Today, the Sky Patrol City seemed unimportant, and the sword gate guarding the Sky Patrol City seemed to be one of the three weakest in the Huan country. However, with the strength of the Fortune Immortal Alliance's disciples, it was absolutely impossible to break through the Sky Patrol City. Power and ambition were like rich spiritual wine that made these Fortune Immortal Alliance's sect masters drunk. Only the cold wind of the snowfield and the sharp swords of the sword cultivators could make them drunk. That's true. Zhou Ji of the Yuan Feng Stockade was just an early gold core realm cultivator. He muttered, "I thought that when we forced them to the Sky Patrol City, the sword cultivators would come out to ask what happened. We would explain the matter and shout for half a day until Fairy Hong Xia and the Yi clan came out to explain the reason. Whether they are real or not, we would return to the Huan country." Seeing that the sect masters had misunderstood his words, Zhong Haoren was angry and anxious. He hurriedly shouted, "Everyone, this old man didn't mean that. What this old man wanted to say was, why didn't the Sky Patrol City receive any news that we were going to besiege them? There must be something fishy." The more Zhong Haoren spoke, the more sweat beaded on his forehead. He could already see the shadow of a large net, covering the Million Fortune Immortal Alliance's disciples and the Sky Patrol City's sword cultivators. The size of the net was beyond his imagination. "Marshal Uncle?" Zhong Zhan's voice sounded a little desperate. "There's no need to say anything more. The mastermind behind the scenes has covered our eyes and ears, but that's not scary. What's scary is that they even covered the Sky Patrol City's eyes and ears. Not to mention our Fortune Immortal Alliance, even the Dawn Rain Continent's Dao Cultivation sect is no match for such a force." "Shut up." Zhong Haoren was furious and roared, "Isn't this all?" Zhong Haoren wanted to say, "Isn't this all your idea?" However, Zhong Haoren swallowed his words. If Zhong Haoren didn't want to borrow Black Hand's hands to clean up the Fortune Gate and create a unified Fortune Immortal Alliance, how could he send millions of Fortune Gate's disciples to the sword cultivators? How could the whole situation have gone out of control? Zhong Haoren was so angry that he didn't transmit his voice. Hearing this, everyone was stunned and looked at Zhong Haoren in confusion. Only Zhong Zhan bit his lips and lowered his head. The scene after Qin Ji and Zhong Pei escaped that day appeared in front of his eyes. Wasn't it exactly the same as today? Looking at everyone's gaze, Zhong Haoren took a deep breath and opened his mouth. It seemed like he was going to tell them about the fake sect master's token, but the truth was like a boulder stuck in his throat. No matter what, he couldn't spit it out. "Kill." Right at this time, a sword cultivator in the sword formation closest to Huang Xiaolong's group could no longer hold himself back. He opened his mouth, and a sword cry shook the surroundings. Sword lights that had been accumulating power for a long time rushed towards the Fortune Gate's disciples like a waterfall. Zhong Haoren saw that he couldn't explain, so he immediately made up his mind and made a prompt decision. "Everyone, although we are not from a real sect, we are all Dao Master Zhao's disciples. Since we call ourselves Fortune Immortal Alliance's disciples, we can't belittle ourselves and smear Dao Master Zhao's name. Today, we have already arrived at the gate of Sky Patrol City, so we won't let the sword cultivators of Sky Patrol City and the spectating Dao Cultivation sects laugh at us. Come on, take out our flying swords, take out our magic weapons, and fight with the sword cultivators. Use our blood to wash this cold snowfield. Use our blood to carve the 3 words Fortune Immortal Alliance on Sky Patrol City." P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and thank you to Benbin, Rogue Hero, Kai Kai in the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Theblisky 1, Yong Chang, Honghua, Heaven Defying Radish, Dao Master, Deep Breath, Ferlin, Su Ji, and other fellow Taoists for their rewards. At the same time, I also want to thank everyone who follows the path of spirit cultivation. Fellow Taoists' strong support and tireless reading gave me the strength to write. Chapter 5182. As soon as Zhong Haoren finished speaking, Zhong Zhan immediately flew up and slapped his palm. A magic artifact shaped like a ruler flew out from the top of his head as he shouted, "For Taoist Shao, for the Fortune Gate, disciples, follow me to the Sky Patrol City. Kill." Fei Yunshu also shouted, "With Taoist Zhao's protection, our Fortune Gate disciples will never be defeated. Kill, kill." The Fortune Gate disciples' blood boiled when they heard Fei Yunshu's words. They circulated their true qi and true essence, took out their magic artifacts, and pounced on the sword cultivator disciples in the distance. Following Zhong Zhan's order, Zhong Haoren's eyes revealed a hint of sadness. He raised his hand and took out a round plate that was several feet in size. There were many rust spots on the edge of the round plate, and the center of the round plate was covered with runes. As Zhong Haoren spat out a mouthful of sword essence, the round plate glowed with a green sword light. "Go!" Zhong Haoren growled as his right hand turned into a sword light and struck the round plate. King! The round plate emitted a metallic sound and soared into the sky. However, it only flew for 100 zhang before it shattered. Thousands of small green swords flew out from the light and pierced towards the sky above the Sky Patrol City. Kill! The small azure sword shot out like a shooting star, covering 1,000 zhang in the blink of an eye, covering the sky above the Sky Patrol City. When the Fortune Gate's disciples around the Sky Patrol City saw the small azure sword, they roared and charged out. Cheng Jizi and the others were stunned. They really did not understand why Zhong Haoren suddenly gave the signal to attack after getting angry. However, when the surrounding disciples started to attack, their misgivings, doubts, and cowardice disappeared like ashes. Cheng Jizi even shouted, "Kill! For Taoist Shao, for our Fortune Gate. Kill! Disciples, kill!" Zhao Ming and the others' battle cries were different from the ordinary disciples. Their voices were filled with determination. Although they did not understand the meaning of Zhong Haoren's words, how could they not smell the danger from this strange battle formation? They clearly knew that this should be the last battle of their lives, and also the most magnificent battle. Regardless of victory or defeat, they would definitely not return alive, and their names would definitely be left in the annals of history. Zhong Haoren, who was on the south side of Sky Patrol City, was the first to issue the order to attack. On the north side of Sky Patrol City, Fairy Wuxia, who was in the sword formation, was stunned as she looked at the excited sword cultivator disciples. She did not know what was going on. "Senior sister?" Xiao Mao hurriedly asked, "What's going on?" Fairy Wuxia shook her head and said, "How would I know?" As she spoke, Fairy Wuxia looked around and leaped into the sky. She activated her true vitality and shouted, "I, Fairy Wuxia, who are you? Why are you besieging Sky Patrol City?" A group of sword cultivator disciples shouted at the top of their lungs. A 6th-grade swordsman flew out on a sword light and shouted, "Fairy Wuxia, we are Fortune Gate's disciples. We heard that you are going to be engaged to the Yi family's young lord, so we are here to stop you. You are Taoist Zhao's partner, how can you marry someone else?" "Ah?" Fairy Wuxia was even more shocked and shouted, "This? How is this possible? When did I get engaged to Yi Shixiang?" Fairy Wuxia. At this time, nearly 1,000 sword cultivator disciples shouted in unison, "You are Taoist Zhao's partner, how can you marry someone else? We are here to besiege Sky Patrol City to stop the engagement between the Kai family and the Yi family." Along with the loud cry of these over 1,000 sword cultivator disciples, several tens of thousands of sword cultivator disciples in an area of tens of miles around them also activated their sword energies at the same time. Then, a voice that could topple mountains and overturn seas rang out, "Fairy Wuxia, you are Zhenren Zhao's Dao companion. How can you marry into Yi clan? We Fortune Gate's disciples have risked our lives to stop you." "Ha!" Huang Mingxiang saw the awkward look on Fairy Wuxia's face and covered his mouth with his hand. He laughed heartily and said, "Sister, look at what you've done. You're going to get married soon. How can you still be worthy of Brother Xiao?" Xiao Mao was also shocked. He turned to look at the Kai family's disciples and saw that they were also confused. Xiao Mao suddenly came to his senses and quickly looked at the Yi family's disciples who were not too far away from the Kai family's disciples. Boom boom boom. Amidst the thunderous roars of the Fortune Gate disciples, a five-colored sword light soared into the sky from the center of the sword formation. The sword light landed below Fairy Hongxia like a waterfall, and before Fairy Hongxia could do anything, the sword light intertwined with each other. As the sword light surged, tens of thousands of sword flowers bloomed like a spring tide. What was special was that the area several hundred zhang around Fairy Hongxia was enveloped by the sword light, and Fairy Hongxia's pink-robed figure slowly rose up amidst the sword light. This. Fairy Hongxia frowned slightly. Just as she was about to execute a sacred art to shatter the sword light, Yi Shixiang's gentle voice resounded. "Lord Fairy, please wait a moment. This one has something to say." Embarrassment and anger flashed in Fairy Hongxia's eyes. She seemed to have understood something and looked at the tens of thousands of Fortune Gate's disciples and thousands of Sword Cultivator disciples. She clenched her fists and suppressed her true essence to observe the situation. Woo 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 woo. The sword tip was like a flower, pushing Fairy Hongxia up 1,000 feet before stopping. Then, a pleasant sword hum sounded like the sound of a flute. The sword light below Fairy Hongxia changed again. 30% of the sword light shattered and turned into hundreds of sparrows that fell towards Yi Shixiang, who was in the middle of the sword formation. These sparrows stopped in midair and formed a magpie bridge. Yi Shixiang was as handsome as jade and his eyes were like stars. He wore a simple and unadorned crown on his head. He held a fiery red flying sword in his hands and stepped onto the magpie bridge. As the sparrows returned to the sword light, Yi Shixiang's figure also flew towards Fairy Hongxia. At this moment, Yi Shixiang's body was surrounded by a 9-colored sword light. An indescribable aura was emitted from his body. Not to mention Fairy Hongxia and Huang Mengxiang, the female cultivators, even Yu Tong, Yun Jiechong, and the other male cultivators felt ashamed of their inferiority. As for the Fortune Gate's disciples who were shouting like a tsunami, other than the ripples in the distance, there were only gasps nearby. Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold in front of them. Yi Shixiang flew in front of Fairy Hongxia and bowed slightly. His eyes were filled with tenderness as he looked into Fairy Hongxia's eyes and said affectionately, "Fairy." This one fell in love with Fairy at first sight. In the past few days, I have been impressed by Fairy's temperament and words. This one feels that he has fallen in love with Fairy. Previously, this one did not dare to agree to Fairy's conditions, not because this one was making things difficult for Fairy, but because this one was afraid that once I agreed to Fairy's conditions, Fairy would leave Sky Patrol City and this one would never be able to see Fairy again. Ever since this one saw Fairy, this one did not dare to imagine what it would be like to live and cultivate without Fairy in this world. This one has been thinking about how to ask Fairy, but today, this so-called Fortune Gate's disciple gave this one a slap in the face. If I love you, I must say it out loud. Now, this one is proposing to Fairy in front of tens of thousands of Fortune Gate's disciples and thousands of Sky Patrol City's disciples. This treasure sword in my hand is the Yi family's patriarch's keepsake. It was given to me by my Yi family's patriarch for the success of the alliance. This one will present this Yi family's keepsake to Fairy as a betrothal gift. When Fairy receives this flying sword, you will have the authority to control my Yi family. Fairy also knows that this one has a lazy personality. This one needs Fairy's help. Both the Yi family and Kai family need Fairy's help. Fairy, please accept this one's sincere request. Following Yi Shixiang's words, the flying sword in his hand emitted a fiery red sword light. This sword light was like a spark that lit up Fairy Hongxia's jade-like face. Two faint sparks slowly emerged from Fairy Hongxia's pitch-black eyes. Together. Huang Mengxiang was extremely touched as he shouted loudly. This guy. He really knows how to be pretentious. A rare look of jealousy appeared in Yun Jiechong's eyes. He originally thought that he was the favored child of the heavens, but in his life, he had met Xiao Hua, Fairy Hongxia, Yu Tong, and now Yi Shixiang. Which one of them was not several times stronger than him? Xiao Mao's heart clenched. Just as he was about to move his body to stop Yi Shixiang, Fairy Hongxia's astonished face suddenly revealed a peerlessly beautiful smile. This smile was like a flower, 100 times more vivid than the resplendent sword light. A faint voice that was neither servile nor overbearing rang out, "Young Lord Yi, I think you've made a mistake." However, without waiting for Fairy Hongxia to finish speaking, Yi Shixiang chuckled and said, "Lord Fairy, I think you've made a mistake." Yi Shixiang's voice sounded very gentle in the ears of others. However, in Fairy Hongxia's ears, it slowly elongated and was gradually filled with temptation. The fiery red color of the sword light even dyed the surrounding space. Yi Shixiang's face slowly transformed and actually turned into Xiaohua's phoenix eyes. Fairy Hongxia's heart couldn't help but tremble when she saw the Tao companion of her dreams appear. Her eyes were instantly filled with fire. Yi Shixiang continued, "Hongxia, don't you want to marry me?" "Of course." Facing Xiaohua, Fairy Hongxia didn't hesitate and blurted out. Fortunately, without waiting for Fairy Hongxia to finish speaking, an earth-shattering fiery light rushed out from under the sword light like a volcanic eruption. The sword light that originally enveloped Fairy Hongxia in layers instantly disappeared like melting blood. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, tip, and thank you for all forms of support. Thank you to Benbin, Rogue Hero, Kai Kai in the Rain, Lonely Asylum, Theblisky 1, and other fellow Taoists for taking the lead, Yong Chang, Honghua, Heaven-Defying Radish, Tao Sovereign, Deep Breath, Ferlin, Su Ji, and other fellow Taoists for their tips. Today, I'll add more chapters for you. At the same time, I'd like to thank every fellow Taoist who follows the path of spirit cultivation. Fellow Taoists' great support and tireless reading gave me the strength to write. Chapter 5183. Kiki. A burst of shrill laughter came from the flames. Following this laughter, the blood vessels of all the cultivators within a few li couldn't help but throb. Fairy Hongxia was no exception. As her blood and qi surged, the fiery red in front of her instantly disappeared. Fairy Hongxia's eyes turned slightly and saw Yi Shixiang's somewhat embarrassed and angry expression. Swoosh! In the soaring flames, a woman that was dozens of meters tall flew out. Wasn't she the drought demon that Xiaohua had met back then? At this moment, the drought demon had already shed her ugliness and was in the form of a charming woman. However, this woman was so valiant. Following the flames, the woman stretched out her arms and stabbed into the sword light that Yi Shixiang had set up with his sword artifact. Kacha! The sword light was annihilated and the sword artifact whimpered. The romantic sea of flowers was completely extinguished. Yi Shixiang. Xiao Mao followed behind the woman and rushed into the sky. He landed beside Fairy Hongxia and roared, "What are you doing?" Fairy Hongxia hadn't completely woken up earlier. She only completely woke up when Xiao Mao flew out and the drought demon woman destroyed the illusion. Her eyes were filled with disgust as she floated to Xiao Mao's side and berated, "Yi Shixiang, you dare to scheme against I?" Haha. Seeing that his scheme was ruined, Yi Shixiang first became angry out of humiliation. However, after a moment he laughed out loud again. Sword light flashed around his body and a second-grade sword transformation realm sword aura soared into the sky, forcing Fairy Hongxia to use her pressure to block it. As for Xiao Mao, he couldn't even breathe under this sword aura. Roar! The drought demon woman roared angrily. The space around Xiao Mao was suffused with blood-red flames. Xiao Mao then stood still and coldly looked at Yi Shixiang's wild laughter. He said, "Yi Shixiang, this Xiao arrogantly thought that you were the young lord and even introduced Fairy Hongxia here. So all of this was a trap that you set up." After Yi Shixiang finished laughing, he looked at Xiao Mao with interest and said, "Xiao Mao, don't think that I don't know that you're a subordinate of the Immortal Alliance's Falling Star Sky. You came to my Yi clan under Falling Star Sky's orders, right?" Xiao Mao's expression greatly changed. He looked at Yi Shixiang in disbelief and said, "How did you know? Could it be?" "That's right, I knew about it long before you came." Yi Shixiang said indifferently, "And I don't mind telling you that Luo Xingtian intentionally leaked this information to me." "That's impossible." Xiao Mao's face turned ashen as he cried out involuntarily, "If that's the case, Why did he send me here? It's simple, Yi Shixiang replied, because Luo Xingtian was afraid that you would disturb what he wanted to do, so he ordered you to come to me. Of course, he also wants to kill you, but your bloodline is different, your identity is different, and you have a lot of value. He doesn't want to do it for now. What does he want to do? Xiao Mao's heart gradually calmed down as he asked Yi Shixiang. Yi Shixiang shrugged and said with a smile, I originally didn't want to tell you, but when I thought about how you won't live to see the day when Starfall Sky controls the Thunder Control sect, I might as well tell you. Starfall Sky wants to scheme against the Imperial Thunder sect? Xiao Mao was stunned when he heard this. He sneered and said, his ambition is not small. To avoid refinement cultivator, that can't be considered as ambition. Yi Shixiang replied, if he didn't fear Kunlun sect's Taoist master Xianqing, he would have established a sect on Dawn Rain continent long ago. Of course, the current Immortal Union is different from before. Even you have pledged your allegiance to the Immortal Union. The day when Starfall Sky unifies Dawn Rain continent is probably not far away. How do you know so much? Xiao Mao narrowed his eyes and asked. Yi Shixiang smiled and replied, why would a person who's about to die have so many questions? I don't care what Starfall Sky wants to do. Xiao Mao looked at Yi Shixiang and said word by word, I also don't care what you collude with Starfall Sky. It doesn't matter whether I live or die, but I absolutely won't allow you to have any ideas about my senior sister. Ha! Yi Shixiang laughed loudly when he heard this. He raised his hand and pointed at Xiao Mao and said, a golden core cultivator who bowed down and begged me to bestow the opportunity to conceive a nascent soul dares to boast like this in front of me. Just by relying on you, a Hanba who's comparable to a late nascent soul cultivator? She's not a Hanba. She's called Huahong. Xiao Mao calmly corrected. Xiao Mao, oh Xiao Mao. Yi Shixiang finished laughing and looked at Hanba who was called Huahong with interest and asked, do you know why I arranged the alliance with Kai Clan in Sky Patrol City? Xiao Mao suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. He couldn't help but ask, why? Could it be that you already knew that I have Huahong? Not only do I know that you have a Hanba, I also know that you used a soul bag to bring Hanba from Million Meng Mountains to Sky Patrol City. Yi Shixiang's expression looked more and more like a cat playing with a mouse. Xiao Mao. Fairy Hong Xia hurriedly called out, don't talk too much to him. Xiao Mao's face was distressed. He looked at Yi Shixiang and asked softly, Yi Shixiang, I don't know if you'll tell me, but I still want to ask, Qin Jian, was it you who arranged it? Qin Jian? Fairy Hong Xia heard and couldn't help but scold, Xiao Mao, what nonsense are you thinking? How could Qin Jian be arranged by the Yi clan? Senior sister? Xiao Mao turned around and said, I've never told anyone about Huahong. I only revealed it to her once because I was afraid that it would cause Qin Jian to misunderstand. Sigh. Fairy Hong Xia sighed and didn't say anything else. Yi Shixiang looked at Fairy Hong Xia and then looked at Xiao Mao's grief-stricken face. He smiled and said, if that's the case, then I might as well tell you. Qin Jian's real name is Yi Jian. He was originally a disciple of the Yi clan. When Yi Yu told the clan about you, the clan had arranged for Yi Jian to be with you. As he spoke, Yi Shixiang raised his hand and took out a sword pouch. He glanced at Hanba and said, do you think that you can protect Fairy Hong Xia's safety with Hanba by your side? I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed outside Sky Patrol City today. Woo woo. As Yi Shixiang opened the sword pouch, he didn't see what was coming out of the sword pouch, but he heard the sound of wind and snow howling within a dozen miles. The space that was originally controlled by Hanba's dry and fiery heat was suddenly filled with cold ice and wind. This cold intent was like a tidal wave that came from all directions and rushed straight into the sword pouch. With a furious roar, a huge figure flashed out of the sword pouch. Crack, crack, crack. A series of spatial cracks appeared in the nearby void. Boundless cold intent fell into the figure. A snow tapir that was 100 feet in size stood steadily in midair. This snow tapir was in the shape of an ape. Its body was covered with long snow-colored fur. Boundless cold intent overflowed from its fur. Just as the snow tapir stood still, Its eyes immediately emitted an ominous glint as it looked at Hanba. Damn it. When Xiao Mao saw the snow taper flying out, he cursed in his heart. Sure enough, Hanba let out a hoarse cry and waved its hands. Layers of flames immediately pounced on the snow taper. Looking at the snow taper again, it just pounded its chest with its claws and opened its mouth. A torrent of cold air was spewed out. When the cold air landed in the air, it immediately froze the nearby space. Even the ice and snow within a few hundred feet surged toward the air pillar and turned into a tide of ice that pounced on the flames. Sizzle! An ear-piercing sound was produced from the ice and fire. Boundless water vapor rose and covered everyone's eyes. Boom! At the same time when the water vapor was produced, the snow taper waved its claws forward. Amidst the rumbling sound, icicles that were dozens of feet long fell from the sky and smashed toward Hanba's fiery rainbow. Hanba's fiery rainbow was fearless when he saw the icicles approaching. He waved one hand forward and the power of his bloodline pounced on the snow taper. His other hand waved a fist and hit one of the icicles. Wherever the wind from his fist passed, flames condensed into a fire pillar that directly penetrated the icicle. As for the other icicle, Hanba only snorted. A crimson line of fire flew out of her nostrils and hit the icicle. The huge icicle melted rapidly as soon as it came into contact with the line of fire. Oh! At this moment, the bloodline energy of the Hitorigami had already struck the snow taper. The snow taper roared madly while its eyes glowed crimson red, and then its entire body was covered in frost. It was like a layer of ice armor that actually froze the bloodline energy of the Hitorigami. Not only that, but the moment the ice armor was formed, waves of cold yin-chi rushed out from the snow region beneath the snow taper and entered the snow taper's body in a frenzy. As the snow taper roared, its body grew several times larger. With a slight movement of its claws, huge ice blocks formed around the drought demon's fiery rainbow. Fiery Rainbow was furious. She did not use her firepower. Instead, her body swayed and her arms instantly pierced through the layers of ice. She rushed to the snow taper and fiery red spikes appeared between her fingers, piercing into the snow taper's body. Poof, poof, poof. As soon as fiery Rainbow's spikes pierced into the snow taper's body, a low muffled sound was heard. Crack, crack, crack. Layers of hard ice crystals appeared from the spikes. Although they cracked instantly, they still blocked the spikes. Woo! The snow taper suddenly lifted its head. The sound of wind whistling was heard as it hit Fiery Rainbow's abdomen. Fiery Rainbow saw that and did not dare to be slow. She hurriedly waved her arms to block it. Bang! Unfortunately, the snow taper's strength was so great that it actually sent Fiery Rainbow flying. However, the moment she was sent flying, Fiery Rainbow pressed her hand backward. A crimson fire pillar appeared from her palm and hit the snow taper's leg. Woo-woo! The hard ice was instantly destroyed. Excruciating pain came from the snow taper's leg. The snow taper could not help but roar. Although the snow taper's strength was slightly weaker, it was able to draw support from the power of ice and snow of the Sky Patrol City's snowfield to fight evenly with Hitorigami. Yi Shixiang's eyes were filled with satisfaction. He turned to look at Fairy Hongxia and said, "Fairy, although I've done so many calculations, it's actually all for you. Moreover, I don't mind telling you that my Yi clan's foundation is far beyond what you've imagined. It's also far beyond what you've seen now. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Chidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and thank you for all forms of support." Chapter 5184. There's no need to say any more. Fairy Hongxia's expression was even colder than the icy plains as she mercilessly rejected him. Kill a kill? Yi Shixiang still wanted to say something, but above the Sky Patrol City, countless cyan sword lights soared into the sky. The Fortune Gate's disciples in front of the sword formation hesitated for a moment, then they activated their flying swords and magic artifacts and charged towards the sword formation according to their original plan. Hee. Seeing this, Yi Shixiang unconsciously smiled and said, "Fairy Hongxia, you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Since that's the case, Don't blame me for using force." As he said that, Yi Shixiang raised his hand. Woo! His left arm transformed into a giant hand formed from sword lights and grabbed at Fairy Hongxia. "If you want to use force, you'll have to get past me first." Xiao Mao felt extremely guilty. He really didn't know that he had fallen into Yi Shixiang's trap from the start. He also didn't know that his good intentions had led Fairy Hongxia into a trap. However, he knew that Fairy Hongxia was definitely not Yi Shixiang's opponent. At this time, Xiao Mao was also prepared to die. He moved his body and blocked in front of Fairy Hongxia. As he chanted some inexplicable words, his arms instantly turned blood red. Xiao Mao's hands grabbed at the air and two blood-red shadows several zhang in size shot out from his arms and grabbed at Yi Shixiang. "Junior brother Xiao, I'll help you." Fairy Hongxia naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. Seeing Xiao Mao make a move, Fairy Hongxia let out a furious roar and raised her hand to slap the top of her head. Woo! A fiery red brilliance emerged from the top of Fairy Hongxia's head and condensed into a 300-meter-long yuaning hand that grabbed at Yi Shixiang's sword light hand. Fairy Hongxia's nascent soul hand arrived first and collided with Yi Shixiang's sword light hand. Rumble! In a loud explosion, the two large hands were annihilated at the same time. Sword light and brilliance splashed in all directions. The surrounding space was even cracked by the shockwave. Looking at the two of them, Fairy Hongxia's body swayed and she was involuntarily sent flying several zhang. Her face was flushed red. As for Yi Shixiang, he was as steady as a boulder. His left hand suddenly made a grabbing motion and another sword light hand appeared out of thin air. This time, the sword light hand was much stronger than before. Before it landed, it had already sealed the space around Fairy Hongxia. Swoosh! At this moment, Xiao Mao's two blood-colored shadows swept across the sky and landed beside Yi Shixiang. Along with the descent of this blood-colored shadow, fine blood runes appeared all over Yi Shixiang's body. The blood runes were like ripples on a lake as they rippled on the surface of Yi Shixiang's body and gradually seeped into Yi Shixiang's heart meridians. Hehe! Yi Shixiang controlled the sword light while looking down at his own body. He laughed. Is this the power of bloodline? Looks like this is all there is to it. Along with Yi Shixiang's voice, the flying sword in Yi Shixiang's right hand suddenly ignited. Yi Shixiang grinned maliciously and waved his hand. A several zhang long coiling dragon was born from the flying sword. It roared angrily and pounced towards the blood-colored shadow. Wherever the coiling dragon passed, the blood-colored shadow would be swept away and devoured by the coiling dragon. The coiling dragon even swung its tail and actually followed the trail of the blood-colored shadow as it pounced towards Xiao Mao. This is a Dao cultivator's spirit weapon? Xiao Mao couldn't help but cry out when he felt a suffocating spiritual beast aura assaulting his face. A feeling of innate restraint involuntarily arose from the bottom of his heart, making it hard for him to resist. Ha! Yi Shixiang laughed loudly and said, "That's right, I'll use your bloodline to make this old man's spirit weapon." Fifth. Xiao Mao didn't dare to be negligent. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. He hastily waved his hands and streaks of blood-colored shadows were born from his hands. As the blood-colored shadows flew out, Xiao Mao's complexion became increasingly ghastly pale. In just a few breaths, the blood essence transformed into a human figure. Go! Xiao Mao raised his hand and grabbed. With a low roar, the blood-colored shadow suddenly expanded and became several zhang long as it charged towards the coiling dragon. Boom! The human-shaped blood-colored shadow collided with the coiling dragon and was annihilated at the same time. The sound wasn't deafening, but within this sound, the space within a 300 zhang radius was corroded. Strands of indescribable pitch black seeped out from the void. Ah! Xiao Mao let out a blood-curdling scream as his body withered and collapsed in midair. Roar roar! Drought Demon, who had been lured away by the snow taper, sensed that Xiao Mao was injured. It roared angrily and wanted to fly back, but at this moment, Drought Demon was like a flame that had fallen into a frozen river. Although the flames were very powerful, the nearby ice and snow power was too vast. No matter how anxious it was, it couldn't break through the snow taper's blockade and couldn't get close at all. Junior Marshal Brother Xiao. Fairy Hongxia was greatly alarmed. She wanted to move her body over to help, but Yi Shixiang's sword light hand had already descended. She didn't dare to be distracted. Her body trembled, and with a clear cry, an ice phoenix dharma body that was several hundred zhang long flew out from Fairy Hongxia's body. Although this ice phoenix dharma body was a dharma body, it didn't look any different from a real ice phoenix. Once the ice phoenix appeared, a myriad of ice and snow power gushed out from the void. An aura comparable to the middle and late nascent soul stage was emitted from the ice phoenix's body. Ka. The ice phoenix spread its wings, and its sharp claws grabbed at the sword light hand. Streaks of frost were like swords, shattering Yi Shixiang's sword light hand. Good. When Yi Shixiang saw this, he wasn't alarmed but happy instead. He cried out, "Fairy Hongxia, I didn't expect your ice phoenix dharma body to be so powerful." Ka. The ice phoenix let out a clear cry and flapped its wings. A murderous aura soared into the sky. The ice phoenix's phoenix eyes were filled with anger as it flew towards Yi Shixiang. Its sharp claws that streaked across the void flickered with cold light. A bone-piercing coldness was born from its sharp claws, enveloping Yi Shixiang in a radius of several hundred zhang. When he saw how powerful the ice phoenix was, Yi Shixiang's expression turned solemn. He didn't dare to be careless. Sword light surged around his body, and the flying sword in his right hand let out an ear-piercing sword cry at the same time. He gradually waved it. The outcome of Yi Shixiang and Fairy Hongxia's battle would be decided in this one strike. Right at this moment, 4 earth-shattering booms came from the ground. The mountains shook and the earth shook. An enormous and unparalleled suction force rushed out and enveloped the space where Yi Shixiang, Xiao Mao, Fairy Hongxia, and the Ice Phoenix were. They couldn't resist at all. Fairy Hongxia and the Ice Phoenix were both grabbed by a huge hand and dragged down several hundred zhang into an enormous blood vortex. Damn it! Although the majestic suction force swept past him, it had no effect on him. How could Yi Shixiang not know that Yu Tong and Yun Jiechong had made a move? He cursed under his breath and looked down. When he looked down, even Yi Shixiang sucked in a breath of cold air and exclaimed, How did it become like this? On the ground, there were several mountains that stood tall in the frozen snowfield. At this time, other than the mountain that they were facing, the other 4 mountains to their left had collapsed. The collapse of these 4 mountains was different from usual. It wasn't as if the mountain rocks had collapsed and rolled around. Instead, the entire mountain had collapsed into the ground as if a huge fist had smashed the 4 mountains into the ground. Following the collapse of the mountain peaks, 4 pitch-black abysses that were more than 10 li wide appeared outside the Sky Patrol City. If it was just the abysses, Yi Shixiang might not have been so shocked. Because at this time, within the abysses, there were layers of thick purple qi that had condensed into a funnel-like purple vortex. It soared into the sky and enveloped the surrounding 100 li. Not only were the thousands of sword cultivators and the 5 aristocratic families' disciples in the Sky Patrol City trapped, but a small number of Fortune Gate's disciples were also trapped. The purple vortex that had sucked Fairy Hongxia and the Ice Phoenix avatar into it was not far away from the sword formation. Looking at the sword formation, whether it was Heavenly Gate Mountains Huang Mengxiang, Su Yenyun's Yun family's Yun Xiaoying, or Fallen Gold Mountains Yu family's Yu Xiong, they had all released their true spirit avatars under Yu Tong and Yun Guichong's orders when the Fortune Gate's disciples attacked. Even the other disciples of the 3 families who could use their avatars had also released their faint and unformed avatars. For spirit blood curse? Yi Shixiang was indeed worthy of being the Yi family's patriarch. When he saw this scene, he immediately understood something. A kind of jealousy appeared in his eyes as he cursed inwardly, "Damn it, this old man only saw Fairy Hongxia's innate spirit body and neglected her Ice Phoenix bloodline. I didn't expect Yu Tong and Yun Guichong to have this idea." Thinking of this, Yi Shixiang hurriedly released his divine sense to investigate. Sure enough, the 4 spirit blood curse was somewhat inverted. The 4 purple vortexes were drawn out from the ground at an oblique angle. It looked very forced and seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Boom boom boom. The moment Yi Shixiang released his divine sense, the 3 purple vortexes in the distance vibrated at the same time as if they were breathing. A huge undulation appeared from the ground and rushed to the top of the vortexes. Then, another 3 huge suction forces were spat out from the vortexes, pulling Huang Mingxiang and her vermilion bird avatar, Yun Xiaoying and her flame dragon avatar, Yu Xiong and his silver tiger avatar, and even several other disciples and their avatars into the abyss. The ground shook again, and the 4 vortexes showed the same rhythm. Countless blood threads began to spread in the air like spiritual snakes as everyone fell into the abyss. Moreover, as the blood threads spread, the vortexes began to expand, enveloping even more Fortune Gate disciples. As the blood threads spread, 2 faint silver-white crystal threads stretched out from the 4 vortexes. When they reached the center of the space, they merged into 2 more threads and went deep into the 4 spirit blood curse. Weren't they standing there with complacent expressions on Yu Tong and Yun Guichong's faces? Although Yun Guichong did not release his fire dragon celestial body, the flames around his body circled like a dragon, scorching the surrounding void. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you to Alliance Master, Taoist Xiao, for your tip. Chapter 5185. In just a few breaths of time, the blood threads had already reached the top of the whirlpool and a series of crackling sounds could be heard. Countless blood threads mixed with purple qi wrapped around the disciples of the Yun, Yu, Kai, and Huang families. Ah! A series of miserable shrieks could be heard as the bodies of these disciples were minced into pieces and sucked into the whirlpool. Not good. Yi Shixiang was shocked in his heart and he hurriedly shouted, "Yu Tong, what are you doing?" Yu Tong glanced at Yi Shixiang indifferently and said, "Young Master Yi, what is our agreement? You don't have to care about what we do. You do your thing and I will do mine. There is no need to interfere with each other. Your Yi family disciples will definitely be unharmed. This young master naturally won't care about anything else." Yi Shixiang said angrily, "Quickly release Fairy Hongxia. You didn't say that you wanted to harm Fairy Hongxia's life. If you did, this young master would definitely not have agreed to it." While he was speaking, countless miserable shrieks could be heard as the bodies of the patrolling Sword Gate's disciples were minced into pieces by the purple whirlpool. The 4 purple whirlpools spun like a millstone, mincing and devouring the bodies of the Sword Cultivators and Fortune Gate's disciples. The purple whirlpool gradually turned red. Fairy Hongxia's life isn't part of our agreement. Yu Tong looked at the 4 spirit blood curse with satisfaction before sweeping a glance at Yi Shixiang. He replied indifferently, "Moreover, I reluctantly agreed to the condition that you raised earlier. It's a pity that you didn't manage to persuade Fairy Hongxia, so I can only follow the original plan. However, you were actually able to see that this Yu was the mastermind behind all of this. This can be considered commendable. Then this Yu won't haggle with you about the other matter of changing the agreement without permission." The other thing that Yu Tong was talking about was naturally the moving of the 4 spirits blood curse. At this time, the 4 spirits blood curse had gradually entered a good state under Yun Zhukang's control. The previous shaky state had stabilized. Strands of crystal light from the purple vortex turned into pure blood strands and rushed into the blood formation. In the void near the blood strands, indescribable ghostly sounds, distorted illusions, and other strange phenomena gradually appeared, making people know that the blood formation was in defiance of the natural order at first glance. "Damn it!" Yi Shixiang roared. "Fairy Hongxia is this young master's Tao companion. Even if this young master has to fall out with you all, this young master will definitely save her." "Young Master Yi?" A blush appeared on Yu Tong's face. It was unknown whether it was because of excitement or because the blood vessels below him had begun to surge. His voice was slightly shrill. "Are you prepared to be a traitor?" "That's right." Yi Shixiang's eyes also turned red. "I'd rather have my reputation ruined than let go of a chance to obtain a Tao companion." Yu Tong's eyes were filled with ridicule. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he closed it again. He raised his hand and pointed at the huge abyss that Fairy Wuxia had fallen into and said indifferently, "Young Master Yi, it's not that this Yu is looking down on you, but with your second-grade sword transformation strength, you're nothing in front of this Yu. If you have the ability, then go ahead and save her. However, this Yu will speak bluntly. If you dare to save her, then don't be afraid of throwing your life away." This Yi Shixiang was somewhat hesitant. After all, the aura of the 4 purplish-red whirlpools was becoming increasingly powerful and had already surpassed the limits of a sword transformation swordsman's control. The snow taper and Hitorigami that were fighting earlier were also disturbed by this heavenly phenomenon and stopped fighting. Hitorigami tried his best to charge into the blood formation to search for Xiao Mao, but to no avail. How could Yi Shixiang dare to take the risk? Yu Tong smiled and said, "Young Master Yi, let's not talk about what happened earlier. Our cooperation is perfect. After this matter, this Yu and junior brother Yun's strength will rise to another level. It will be even more beneficial for our cooperation." Speaking of this, Yu Tong raised his head and looked at the mountain range in the distance. After the Fortune Gate's disciples had left, peace was restored. However, at this time, sword lights appeared again like broken stars. In the sky, the wind and clouds were surging in all directions. Obviously, another wave of snowstorm was coming. Yu Tong withdrew his gaze and looked at Yi Shixiang, saying meaningfully, "Moreover, the Yi clan's plan is not here. Why is young Master Yi so conflicted? Why don't you look further? As the saying goes, there are plenty of fish in the sea. How can young Master Yi hang himself on a crooked tree like Fairy Wuxia?" Yi Shixiang pursed his lips and did not say a word, as if he was thinking about something. Yu Tong lowered his head and looked at the formation. The inside of the formation had become a sea of blood. Most of the sword cultivators and Fortune Gate's disciples had been turned into blood that flowed into the abyss through the vortex. Outside the sea of blood, several hundred Yi clan's disciples were standing there in a panic. They were like ants in front of a powerful force that was as powerful as heaven's will. Other than the Yi clan's disciples, there was another person who was unexpectedly struggling with all his might. This person was Xiao Mao. Even though Xiao Mao wasn't strong enough and had even been injured by Yi Shixiang, he was still a soul cultivator from the Lux village after all. Within the blood curse of the 4 spirits, he was able to rely on his mastery of the power of his bloodline to resist the strangulation of the blood formation. "Young Master Yi," Yu Tong said half jokingly, half seriously, "this Yu's patience is limited. If young Master doesn't make a decision, not only will the several hundred Yi clan's disciples be trapped inside the sword formation, even young Master will not be able to protect himself. At that time, I'm afraid this Yu will not be able to answer to the Yi clan's patriarch. Therefore, I ask young Master Yi to reconsider. Don't let your previous efforts go to waste." "All right." Yi Shixiang finally gritted his teeth and said, "Regarding today's matter, this young master will take it as suffering a loss in silence." Yu Tong said coldly, "Young Master Yi is wrong. It's this Yu who has suffered 2 losses in silence." Yi Shixiang fiercely glared at Yu Tong. His figure swayed and he rushed out of the blood formation's range. Yu Tong said a few words to Yun Jiechong, who was controlling the blood formation, but Yun Jiechong looked up at Yi Shixiang. Those blood-red eyes clearly revealed unwillingness. However, in the end, Yun Jiechong waved his hand and a crack that was less than a few feet was torn open in the closed blood formation. "My apologies," Yun Jiechong said with a hoarse voice. "Because this sword formation deviated, this Yun can't control it as I wish. Now, I can only open up this small crack. I hope young Master Yi can understand." Paul said. Young Master Yi looked at that small crack. It was like a person standing under the city wall facing a dog hole. Although he was furious, there wasn't any special expression on his face. He responded in a low voice and said loudly, "Yi clan's disciples, follow this young master out." The Yi clan's disciples responded. They immediately realized that the force that was tightly suppressing them had suddenly disappeared. Everyone was ecstatic as if they had been pardoned. They immediately urged their figures to fly towards Yi Shixiang and prepared to fly out of the formation. Yi Shixiang didn't even look at them. He turned into a sword light and directly crashed into that crack that wasn't much bigger than a dog hole. Ha! When Yun Jiechong saw Yi Shixiang flying into the crack, he couldn't help but laugh loudly. He looked at Yu Tong and said, "Senior martial brother Yu, this younger brother is really happy today." This younger brother doesn't dare to look at this guy's face for a long time. Yu Tong smiled faintly and said, "Today is just the beginning. We merely let the Yi clan's young master see our faces. After today, you and I will exchange our true spirit bloodlines for Saint Spirit bloodlines. After we cultivate in seclusion for a few hundred years, we can expect to split our spirit and separate our bodies. At that time, when you look at the entire Dawn Rain continent, everything will have to see your face. Everything that happened today is nothing but dust." Ha. Yun Jiechong looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. The flames around his body turned blood red. That flame dragon avatar once again expanded by 30%. A ferocious dragon avatar was about to leave his body. Yun Jiechong's laughter rippled through the entire blood curse space, appearing especially enchanting. Yu Tong still had a smile on his face as he quietly watched. However, the corner of his eyes occasionally glanced at his feet. The pure bloodline power was becoming increasingly exuberant. "Kill! Kill! Oh!" Countless shouts and screams rang in Zhong Haoren's ears. Not only did these sounds stop in Zhong Haoren's ears, they also attacked his conscience. They were constantly tearing at Zhong Haoren's heart. Swoosh! An inexplicable sword light slashed under his armpit, piercing through his protective sword light and deeply piercing into his body. A burning pain came from the wound. Hiss! Zhong Haoren sucked in a breath. The immense pain made his body tremble, but at the same time, a sense of satisfaction arose. Zhong Haoren did not even lift his eyelids. With a wave of his left hand, a scarlet sword light flew out. Ah! Another scream was heard. The swordsman who had sneak attacked him died under this blow. Zhong Haoren's figure staggered slightly, but he barely managed to stand still in midair. When he looked around, the Fortune Gate disciples and Sword Cultivator disciples fighting on the left had thinned out. The sword formation on the south side of the Sky Patrol City had actually collapsed under the Fortune Gate's attacks. Without any hesitation, Zhong Haoren grabbed the hilt of the flying sword that had pierced into his body. Puff! Dirty blood splashed out. Zhong Haoren once again urged the sword origin, and a three-colored sword light gushed out from the wound to protect it. Was I wrong? Zhong Haoren did not look at his wound anymore. Instead, he lowered his head to look at the ground. The white ground was now covered in blood. The remains of hundreds of sword cultivators and Fortune Gate disciples were scattered everywhere. None of these corpses were intact. Some of them were still staring helplessly at the sky. Although their eyes were lifeless, in Zhong Haoren's eyes, it was as if he could see his own heart. Is it worth it for me to do this for the sake of the Fortune Gate's rise? Just because I'm about to die, should I use the lives of these Fortune Gate disciples to cleanse the disciples that I'm not sure of? I clearly know that this Sky Patrol City may be a bait, so why should I risk it all? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a tip, and thank you to the Alliance Master, Taoist Xiao, for your tip. Thank you to all fellow Taoists for your support. Chapter 5186. Fighting Spirit in one go, weakening in the second, and exhausting in the third. Although our Fortune Gate's disciples are charging into the sword formation in one go, it's obvious that these sword cultivators are avoiding our attacks. Once our Fortune Gate's disciples are slightly weakened, they will definitely launch a large-scale counterattack. At that time, it will be our Fortune Gate's time to retreat. Maybe Zhao Ming is right. After this battle in the Sky Patrol City, our Fortune Gate's disciples will grow, but what about these fallen disciples? What about the culprit who instigated the battle between our Fortune Gate and the Sky Patrol City? Is their target the Fortune Gate or the Sky Patrol City? If our Fortune Gate is defeated, do we still have a chance to survive? 1,000 regrets and 1,000 thoughts flowed into Zhong Haoren's mind like floating cotton, causing him to be unable to see the situation of the battle. Woo! At this moment, a low whistling sound came from not far away. A cultivator at the middle stage of the Gold Core realm urged his figure to break away from the battle, and flew towards the distance without the slightest hesitation. Zhong Haoren raised his gaze and saw it clearly. Wasn't that the sect master of the Wisdom Pavilion, Wucheng? Hee. Zhong Haoren sneered and thought to himself, I'm relieved to have found a deserting sect master. However, just as Zhong Haoren was about to withdraw his gaze, he suddenly saw some sword lights in the sky behind him from the corner of his eye. He couldn't help but be stunned for a moment before he hurriedly turned around to look towards the south. At this time, there were already groups of people flying over from the vast snow domain. These people did not look as powerful as the Fortune Gate's disciples, but the momentum they exuded was something the Fortune Gate's disciples could not compare to. Within the momentum, layers of sword intent condensed and sealed off the Fortune Gate disciples' escape route. Sure enough. Seeing this, Zhong Haoren breathed a sigh of relief as if he had finally seen the end. He whispered, "This is the Sword Cultivator's trap." However, before Zhong Haoren could think about why the Sword Cultivators would attack the Fortune Gate disciples, there were screams of ecstasy from the battle group. "Quick, look. Our Sword Cultivators' reinforcements are here." Above the Sky Patrol City's southern city gates, the sword formation that looked like a cocoon was being torn apart. Groups of swordsmen flew out and pounced on the Fortune Gate's disciples who had destroyed the sword formation outside the city gates like wolves and tigers. The number of swordsmen that came later was several times more than the swordsmen that came before. Seeing so many swordsmen flying out and being surrounded by sword cultivators, the Fortune Gate disciples were already flustered. The advantage they had gained earlier collapsed in an instant. Many Fortune Gate disciples put away their flying swords and magic artifacts to protect themselves, hesitating on how to deal with the situation. More Fortune Gate disciples' figures flickered as they broke away from the battle, seemingly wanting to escape. In an instant, the whole battle was in chaos. "Fortune Gate disciples, heed my command, kill." Zhong Zhan's hoarse voice could be heard amidst the chaos. "We can only survive if we kill our way into Sky Patrol City." Hearing Zhong Zhan's words, the nearby Fortune Gate disciples were ready to attack again. They wanted to kill their way into Sky Patrol City before the sword cultivators arrived. "Yen Sun Manor's disciples." Then, another loud voice could be heard. It was Ching Jizi's voice. "Heed my command, form a group and turn back. We'll take advantage of the fact that the sword cultivators have yet to form and break through the encirclement. Where's Wu City? Where's that damn Wu City?" Zhao Ming's voice could also be heard amidst the chaos. "Damn it." Seeing this, Zhong Haoren cursed in a low voice. He raised his hand and put it into his bosom. He had already taken out another crimson sword. "Martial uncle?" Fei Yunshu flew out from Zhong Haoren's left side. His clothes were also soaked in blood. He said anxiously, "It really happened, what should we do?" Although Zhong Haoren's heart was in a mess, he could not show it in front of his disciples. He smiled calmly and said, "What are you afraid of? We've already anticipated this situation and we've even discussed it. All right, this disciple will listen to martial uncle." Fei Yunshu looked at the scarlet sword in Zhong Haoren's hand and knew that Zhong Haoren had made a decision. He sighed in relief and nodded. Swoosh! In the distant battlefield, a dim golden light flashed and Zhong Zhan's figure landed not far away from Zhong Haoren. Zhong Zhan's robe was tattered and stained with blood. His left hand was gone, and his right hand was holding an equally broken magic treasure. Before he could steady himself, Zhong Zhan angrily said, "Martial uncle, are you still thinking about the escape route at this point? This is the time to test our Fortune Gate's disciples. As long as we pass this hurdle and take down the Sky Patrol City, our Fortune Gate's name will immediately spread throughout the world. Once you give the order, all our previous plans will be for naught." Fei Yunshu was also angry. "Zhong Zhan, don't you see? Our Fortune Gate's disciples are surrounded by sword cultivators. We've really fallen into their trap. The only way to escape from this trap is to retreat." "You're wrong." Zhong Zhan's eyes were like fire as he resolutely shook his head and said, "We can only fight with our backs to the wall and attack the Sky Patrol City. If we don't have the heart to die, none of us will be able to escape from this hopeless situation today. How am I wrong? Fei Yunshu shouted. Previously, we arranged for the Fortune Gate to surround the Sky Patrol City from all sides, with a real attack from the east, west, and south, and a feint attack from the north. This was to let the Sky Patrol City's sword cultivators know that they might not be able to defeat our Fortune Gate's disciples and escape from the north. But now, not only did the Sky Patrol City's sword cultivators not escape, they even opened the Sky Patrol City's defensive sword array and counterattacked our Fortune Gate. Our plan has been seen through by the Sky Patrol City, and they want to attack our Fortune Gate with the sword cultivators behind us. We have already expected this situation, so we can only retreat. Zhong Haoren restrained his temper and wanted to persuade Zhong Zhan, but at this moment, most of the Fortune Gate's disciples on the south side of the Sky Patrol City had already started to retreat. The Burning Crane Union's Zhao Ming was giving orders in a low voice, while the Chu Hong faction's Wang Jianqing, Cloud Pavilion Fort's Su Zhonglin, Heaven Competing Pavilions Zhuahong, and Yuanfeng Staccade's Zhou Ji had already gone to the east and west sides of the Sky Patrol City. Zhong Haoren did not know how they would deal with this, but since Zhao Ming was ready to escape, the other sect's chiefs would definitely not fight to the death like Zhong Zhan. Sigh. Zhong Haoren sighed as a sense of helplessness rose in his heart. He no longer hesitated and opened his mouth. A blood-red flying sword flew out and hit the sword in his hand. Martial uncle? Zhong Zhan cried out in grief, as if he had just witnessed the world's most precious thing being destroyed. King! The sword emitted a metallic sound and soared into the sky. After flying for more than 100 zhang, the sword emitted a thunderous boom and a light shadow rapidly emerged. A flying sword several dozen zhang in size appeared, and this scarlet flying sword soared through the sky at an extremely fast speed, piercing through the dark clouds. Swoosh! The dark clouds were pierced through, and a pillar of sunlight pierced through the dark clouds like a sword, piercing through the sky and landing on the north side of the Sky Patrol City. Go! All the Fortune Gate's disciples already had the intention to retreat. Seeing that Zhong Haoren was about to give the order to retreat, they no longer hesitated. They shouted in a low voice and urged their bodies to retreat, gathering at the south side of the Sky Patrol City. Boo! Looking at the blood-red flying sword piercing through the dark clouds, Zhong Zhan's heart felt as if it had been pierced through. His eyes instantly lost their spirit, but it only lasted for a moment before they regained their determination. He looked at Fei Yunshu and Zhong Haoren and said, "Both of you leave. I'm not leaving, I'm going to kill my way to the Sky Patrol City." Zhong Zhan. Zhong Haoren looked at Zhong Zhan and asked word by word, "Tell this old man the truth, were you the one who issued the sect master's order?" Zhong Zhan raised his head and looked at Zhong Haoren and said in a sad voice, "Martial uncle, even now, you still don't believe me?" Zhong Zhan looked past Zhong Haoren and into the distance. He could clearly see the sword cultivators surrounding the Fortune Gate's disciples, and even the Heavenly Demon Sect's disciples' battle formation. Zhong Haoren opened his mouth and said, "Let's go, today's momentum is gone. Your momentum is gone." Zhong Zhan retracted his gaze and stared fixedly at Zhong Haoren, saying, "But my heart is not dead. Martial uncle, I know you don't believe me, but I'll say one last thing, this sect master's order was not issued by me. However, I can tell you with certainty that if this sect master's order was issued a few days later, my sect master's order would have been issued. This sect master's order is really in my heart. My Fortune Gate really needs this kind of blood test. But many people will die in this test." Fei Yunshu shouted, "Moreover, didn't you see? Today, we and all the Fortune Gate's disciples may die here." "We can die." Zhong Zhan sneered and said, "But how can the Fortune Gate's disciples die? If they die, what's the use of my Fortune Gate? My Fortune Gate's disciples may die, but how can my Fortune Gate's spirit die? Even if the Fortune Gate is gone after today's battle. As long as Taoist Zhao's name exists, the Fortune Gate will be re-established on the Dawn Rain mainland in 100 years, or even 1,000 years. How can a Fortune Gate without blood and lives be Taoist Zhao's Fortune Gate?" Zhong Zhan took a deep breath and turned to look at the Sky Patrol City. Although the city was still on guard, many swordsmen and beast cultivators had already rushed out. Zhongzhan said, "Martial uncle, this disciple has already expected this situation. Today's death situation, this disciple has seen it countless times in his dreams. This disciple has never thought of returning from the Sky Patrol City, so, Martial uncle, please leave. In the future, the Fortune Gate still needs Martial uncle's leadership. This traitor will stay here to pay respects to Daoist Xiao." Zhong Haoren looked at the hot-blooded and impulsive Zhongzhan, who had different ideals from him. How could he not be moved by Zhongzhan's generosity? He opened his mouth, and his lips trembled slightly. He wanted to say something, but the words were stuck in his throat. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, bookmark it, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 5187. However, seeing that the closest sword cultivator was closing in on him, and hearing the battle cries coming from behind him, Zhong Haoren raised his right hand and placed it on his throat, shouting hoarsely, "Zhongzhan, are you leaving or not? If you don't leave, this old man will die here." "Martial uncle?" Zhongzhan smiled wryly. "Don't lie to this disciple. You gave the command of the Fortune Gate to this disciple. Isn't it because you have the same idea as this disciple?" Zhongzhan turned to look at Fei Yunshu, who had not left, and said, "Yunshu, you arranged your Fortune Gate to the north of Sky Patrol City and followed us, but didn't you also see through Martial Uncle's plan? This old man's life is coming to an end. It doesn't matter where I die." Zhong Haoren said indifferently, "But you are different. You have a long lifespan, and the Fortune Gate's future depends on you. This old man has failed Daoist Zhao's trust, and I have no face to see him in the underworld. You must not follow in this old man's footsteps." Unfortunately, Zhongzhan was unmoved. He looked coldly at Zhong Haoren and said, "Martial uncle, what's done is done. What should be done must be done. You don't need to coerce this disciple. This disciple did not listen to you in the past, and now, this disciple will not." Fei Yunshu gritted his teeth and flew to Zhong Haoren's side, shouting, "Martial uncle, since we have no intention of leaving, why do you have to do this? Why don't we kill our way over? Killing one sword cultivator is one." As he spoke, he looked at Zhongzhan and said, "Zhongzhan, although I said that I had forgiven you earlier, in reality, I still feel disdain for what you have done. Even today, I still don't think what you did in the past was honorable. However, since you want to die, I will accompany you. When we reach the underworld, I ask Daoist Xiao to judge for us." "Good." Zhongzhan nodded. "It's a deal." Zhongzhan's gaze swept over the sword Zhong Haoren was holding at his throat, and he roared, "For the Fortune Gate, for Daoist Xiao, kill?" Amidst the cries of the sword cultivators, this voice sounded so lonely and desolate, yet so stubborn and so fearless. It was as if there was only one person shouting on an endless narrow road. "Kill." Fei Yunshu wasn't willing to fall behind Zhongzhan by even half a minute. Before Zhongzhan could finish shouting, he also roared angrily and dashed towards the sword cultivator. It was as if he was walking a completely different path from Zhongzhan. The end of the road was also far away, but it seemed like they were heading back to the same destination. "Alright." Zhong Haoren saw that his two disciples were ignoring him, but he didn't feel awkward at all. With such loyal disciples accompanying him on the road to the Yellow Springs, he wouldn't be lonely. He applauded and said, "Since that's the case, let's all go. I'm afraid that only Daoist Zhao's Yellow Springs is our true destination." Zhong Haoren had already made up his mind to die, and he didn't say anything else. He circulated his secret technique for the last time, and his body emitted a whimpering sword hum as he gradually turned into a sword. Right at this time, rumble. Countless thunderous sounds came from the sky south of the Sky Patrol City. At first, the thunderous sounds were like drizzling rain, but in the next moment, they turned into a gurgling stream. By the time Zhong Haoren and the others heard it, it had already turned into the roar of a waterfall. While Fei Yunshu was still in shock, the thunderous sounds eventually turned into surging waves, like the rumbling of war drums, enveloping thousands of li around them. This. Even the stubborn Zhongzhan turned pale with fright at this time. He slowed down and turned his head to look at the south. At this moment, in the originally gloomy sky behind the sword cultivators and heavenly demon sect disciples besieging the fortune gate, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The sky was more ferocious than the craziest tide of the Guihe Sea. In the midst of the thunder, there were flickering silhouettes, as if heavenly soldiers and generals had descended from the sky. An indescribable invincible battle prowess came silently from that place. However, before the battle might could get close, a divine thought that was even more terrifying and vast than the battle might swept across the Sky Sentry's city like a storm. Then, a voice that was louder than thunder was heard, "Damn it! How dare you!" Following this voice, a slender figure leaped across the sky amidst the thunder. This figure landed on the north side of the Sky Patrol City faster than lightning. Although the figure was fast, how could it be faster than Zhongzhan's 1,000 years of devout prayer? When Zhongzhan saw the familiar figure, he almost cried out, "Shao? Daoist Shao? Is that Daoist Shao? How is this possible?" Zhong Haoren and Fei Yunshu naturally saw the figure that had been deeply engraved in their souls. They couldn't believe it because that figure flashed past them like a bolt of lightning. It doesn't matter if it's him or not. Zhongzhan's eyes were blazing, and his pale face was flushed red. He turned to look at the sword cultivators who were several hundred zhang away and said excitedly, "To be able to see Daoist Zhao's figure before I die, this Zhongzhan can die without regrets. All of you have Daoist Shao in your hearts, how could he let you die?" At this time, a sharp voice sounded, "Not to mention that the other Fortune Gate disciples have fled, and only the 3 of you are stubbornly resisting. If all of you die, how can I face Daoist Zhao's trust?" In the direction of this voice, the void was torn apart, and a huge phoenix flew out from it. Wasn't that Feng Wu? With a flap of Feng Wu's wings, Yuanya flew out with the devil spear in his hand. Behind him, Xiang Zhili, Wuqing, and Cui Ying also appeared. Yun Jichong released the 4 spirits' blood curse, allowing Yi Shixiang to crawl out of it like a dog crawling through a hole. Yi Shixiang bit his lips as an indescribable feeling of humiliation rose from the bottom of his heart. When he escaped from the 4 spirits' blood curse, he took a deep breath and turned into a ray of sword light, flying more than 1,000 zhang away. When he raised his head to look again, the sword formation was no longer there. Instead, a purple-red cocoon of light was emitting a bewitching radiance in midair. It resembled a poppy flower that was about to bloom. This poppy flower had yet to bloom, but it had already swallowed thousands of Fortune Gate's disciples. How could the other Fortune Gate's disciples dare to approach it? They frantically tried to escape in all directions, but even so, there were still many disciples who failed to escape from the rapidly expanding 4 blood-red vortexes inside the cocoon of light. Roar! A few low growls sounded, and the snow tapir that was fighting with Hanba earlier flew back. Yi Shixiang looked at the snow tapir, then at Hanba, who was circling around the blood formation but could not find a way to enter. A cold sneer appeared on his face as he took out his sword pouch and put away the snow tapir. Then, he stood there quietly, looking at the 4 spirits' blood curse as if he was contemplating something. Half a cup of tea's time later, all the Yi family's disciples flew out from the 4 spirits' blood curse and landed beside Yi Shixiang, waiting for his orders. Yi Shixiang looked around and ordered, "All of you, quickly retreat to the Sky Patrol City." The group of Yi family's disciples complied and flew towards the Sky Patrol City. They should be here by now, right? Yi Shixiang turned to look at the east and west sides of the Sky Patrol City. The 4 spirits' blood curse had already taken shape and had sealed the surrounding space. Yi Shixiang's divine sense couldn't penetrate it, and even his gaze couldn't see through the distorted space. Yi Shixiang hesitated for a moment, then he flew several hundred zhang away with the Yi family's disciples. At this time, a loud boom came from the distance. Yi Shixiang immediately stopped and turned to look at the source of the sound. On the south side of the Sky Patrol City, a scarlet flying sword several dozen zhang in length was flying at an extremely fast speed, tearing apart the dark clouds in the sky. Coincidentally, a pillar of sunlight pierced down like a light sword. It streaked across the sky and directly landed on the 4-spirit blood curse behind Yi Shixiang. Ah! Yi Shixiang laughed loudly and clapped his hands. Needless to say, this must be the Fortune Gate's signal to retreat. Since the Fortune Gate is retreating, then the 3-sword sect and the Heavenly Demon 3 sects must be here. What is there for this old man to worry about? With that said, Yi Shixiang's figure flickered as he turned into a sword light and flew under the 4 spirits' blood curse. It looked like he wanted to rush into the 4 vortexes supporting the light cocoon. However, the 4 spirits' blood curse had shackled the surrounding space. Layers upon layers of rock-like fluctuations had appeared in the area enveloped by the 4 purplish-red vortexes. These fluctuations had blocked Yi Shixiang's divine sense and even blocked his figure. Yi Shixiang snorted coldly. Sword light flickered around his body and turned into a giant sword in the blink of an eye. Clang! The giant sword pierced through the void, heading straight for the 4 spirits' blood curse. Unfortunately, even though the surrounding space was trembling, and the 2 vortexes closest to it were shaking, the giant sword only managed to pierce half a foot into the space before it was stopped. Yi Shixiang. Yu Tong inside the 4 spirits' blood curse seemed to have noticed something and roared, "What are you doing?" Hee. Yi Shixiang recovered from the sword light and shouted, "You dare to snatch the Tao companion that this young master has his eyes on? This young master would rather defy the old master's order, to save Fairy Hong Xia. You dare!" Yu Tong was flustered and exasperated. He hurriedly urged his figure to fly out of the 4 spirits' blood curse to stop him. Yi Shixiang didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly raised his hand and took out the flying sword that was shining with a fiery red sword light. Thief! Yi Shixiang spat out a mouthful of blood essence. Boom, boom, boom. The giant sword let out a rumbling sound. The ancient runes on the giant sword started to swim like tadpoles. In just a moment, the blood essence dyed all the tadpoles. Then, with a series of popping sounds, all the tadpoles exploded. The broken runes fell off like crumbs. Following the disappearance of the runes, rays of dazzling golden light blossomed from the flying sword. In the end, the crimson-red sword light faded away, revealing a magic weapon that looked like a golden sword breaker. Pride appeared in Yi Shixiang's eyes. He casually shook his hand. A dragon-like roar came from the golden sword breaker. Layers of golden light broke free from the golden sword breaker and transformed into the shape of a flood dragon. Spirit weapon? Yu Tong was shocked when he saw this and cried out, "How can you use my Tao cultivator's spirit weapon? Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, tip it, and thank you for all forms of support." Chapter 5188. Ha! Seeing this, Yi Shixiang couldn't help but laugh out loud. This young master has already told you my Yi clan is definitely not what you see. There's no need for that in the future. This young master will let you experience it today. After he finished speaking, Yi Shixiang activated his sword energy and the golden rapier in his right hand struck the void. Roar! The golden rapier transformed into a flood dragon and pounced towards the space sealed by the 4 spirit blood curse. Crack, crack, crack. The void shattered and the restriction collapsed. The restriction under the 4 spirit blood curse was instantly shattered by the golden rapier. Damn it! Yu Tong shouted with a stern expression, "Yi Shixiang, you dare to spoil this Yu's plans? This you will not rest until you're dead." Since you want to not rest until you're dead, then so be it. Yi Shixiang laughed nastily. Speaking of which, do you think this young master is afraid of you? As he spoke, Yi Shixiang actually swung the golden rapier again. This time, the golden rapier smashed towards the mountain peak that was supporting the 4 spirit blood curse. Boom! The golden rapier transformed into a dragon and hit the center of the mountain peak. With an earth-shaking sound, the huge peak of the mountain was actually shattered by the golden rapier. A small half of the peak collapsed with a crash. The 4 spirit blood curse was like a flower bud that had its stem cut off as it slowly fell from the sky. Zzzzzzzzzzzzzzz. Under the 4 spirit blood curse, The 4 purplish-red whirlpools let out a cryptic sound and abruptly shrank as if they were about to collapse. Hee hee. Yi Shixiang laughed wildly. His figure flashed as he charged towards the abyss that Fairy Hongxia had fallen into. The golden rapier in his hand dimmed. It was obvious that Yi Shixiang couldn't use it continuously. Haha. Before Yi Shixiang could fly closer, he heard the same wild laughter coming from within the 4 spirit blood curse. Yu Tong's excited voice sounded, "Yang, you truly deserve to die. You actually dared to spoil Immortal Envoy Wen's plans. When he finds out, won't he peel off your skin?" Yi Shixiang's figure trembled as he raised his head in astonishment. The expression on his face clearly froze as he argued, "What did you say? Why can't I understand?" Unfortunately, Yu Tong didn't pay any attention to him. He rubbed his hands together and several thick rays of crystal light appeared. Then Yu Tong waved his hands like butterflies and formed a series of strange seals. As the seals formed, an inexplicable fluctuation appeared and 4 different colored figures appeared around Yu Tong. Yi Shixiang was stunned. He seemed to have thought of something as an incredulous expression gradually appeared on his face. He didn't dare to rashly use the golden mace that he was waving, and instead he tightly protected his body. In the blink of an eye, 4 figures of light appeared around the jade board. They were in the shape of a dragon, a phoenix, a tiger, and a vermilion bird. Dang! Yu Tong raised his hand and flicked it. Like the sound of a huge bell, the phoenix figure flew out and fell into the whirlpool that Fairy Hongxia fell into. Woo woo! A strange wind blew out from the whirlpool. Then with a schwa, the 4 spirits' blood curse that was originally tightly wrapped around the whirlpool bloomed like a flower. A powerful aura spread out in all directions. The earth shook and the purplish-red whirlpool shrank rapidly. Below the earth, a crystal that was thousands of feet in size flew out from the abyss. This crystal was completely transparent and was greenish-white in color. Fairy Hongxia was sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the crystal. The ice phoenix celestial body that was spreading its wings was frozen in the center of the crystal. Boom boom. The crystal flew into the sky along with the whirlpool. Wherever it went, space collapsed. All of the purplish-red whirlpools were sucked into the crystal and absorbed by the ice phoenix. Ayo ayo. In the distance, the anxious Hitorigami finally found an opening. He roared and pounced into the 4 spirit blood curse. He rushed into one of the whirlpools. Xiao Mao was already powerless to struggle. His body was slowly being torn apart and gradually fell into the edge of the whirlpool. Yu Tong did not even look at Hitorigami. He flicked his finger again. Ding! The vermilion bird figure flew into another whirlpool. Huang Mingxiang's eyes were tightly shut. A fiery red vermilion bird figure was also frozen in the crystal. Like Fairy Hongxia, it was slowly being pulled out of the ground. The ice phoenix and vermilion bird crystals flew out. The crystal that fell under Yun Guichong's feet immediately detached from his body and flew to the 2 crystals like a spiritual snake, entangling them. Then, a gloomy coldness mixed with a black shadow completely enveloped one side of the 4 spirit blood curse. Senior Yu? Yun Jiechong was originally channeling the blood curse of the 4 spirits with all his might, but when Yi Shixiang destroyed the mountain peak, he suddenly discovered that his magic power was everywhere in the void. Everything was out of his control. At this moment, the crystal light had also disappeared, causing him to be at a loss. He could not help but ask softly, What's going on? Deng. Yu Tong did not answer Yun Guichong. Instead, he flicked his finger and the tiger-shaped light figure fell into a whirlpool. Boom! This time was different from before. A roar sounded from the whirlpool. A huge suction force grabbed Yun Guichong like a giant hand. Yun Guichong was shocked. He asked anxiously, Senior Yu, what's going on? Seeing that Yun Guichong was being grabbed by the suction force, Yu Tong smiled faintly and said, Junior Yun, thank you. The flame dragon is an extremely important true spirit bloodline in the 4 spirit blood curse. How can I not have you to urge the 4 spirit blood curse? But Yun Guichong felt that his physical body was gradually being torn apart. He really did not expect that his previous vigilance would come true in the end. However, he still did not dare to believe it. Doesn't the flame dragon bloodline have Yun Xiaoying? Didn't the four-spirit blood curse? I also set it up bit by bit? Yun Xiaoying is a female cultivator. How can she bear the flame dragon bloodline? Yu Tong smiled and said, also, the four-spirit blood curse you set up is only a four-spirit blood curse. It's not the formation I wanted to set up. Then, Yun Guichong's flesh had already started to shatter. He still shouted with his eyes wide open, then why? At this moment, Yi Shixiang snorted coldly in the distance. Idiot! You've been used by Yu Tong. This young master has also been used by him. Although the four-spirit blood curse you set up was not wrong and this young master has even moved the position of the four-spirit blood curse, it did not affect his plan at all. Also, your four-spirit blood curse is not complete. Only by overturning the mountain that supports the four-spirit blood curse will the four-spirit blood curse truly take shape. This young master wanted to destroy the four-spirit blood curse, but I didn't expect that it would still complete the four-spirit blood curse. I understand. Yun Guichong's face turned distressed. He looked at Yu Tong and said softly, Senior Marshal Brother Yu, could it be that this plan of yours has already started 1,000 years ago? Yu Tong nodded and said, that's right. From the moment this young master saw you, your fate has already been decided. There are very few humans in this world who possess the true spirit bloodline. If I don't use you, who else can I use? Asking a tiger for its skin, Yun Guichong smiled bitterly. I didn't expect that I would still die in the hands of the person I trust the most in the end. Don't talk about trust. Yu Tong said coldly, you don't have the right to say this. You're just using each other. Perhaps Fairy Hong Xia and Huang Mingxiang have the right to say this. Gotcha! With the sound of bones being torn apart, Yun Guichong was dragged into the whirlpool while screaming miserably. Woo-woo! Just as Yun Guichong fell into the whirlpool, a strange sound came from the edge of the whirlpool. Drought Demon was protecting Xiao Mao. Because the two of them could not resist the suction force, their bodies glowing with blood-red light also fell into the whirlpool. Then, with a rumbling sound, Yun Xiaoying and the flame dragon celestial body also turned into crystals and flew out. However, Yun Xiaoying had already turned into an empty shell. Her flesh and blood had long been minced. As the third crystal flew out, a layer of heat and light was born from the crystal, piercing into the void and separating the entire space from the ice phoenix and the vermilion bird. Yi Shixiang narrowed his eyes and watched all of this. He sensed a kind of barrier that he could not resist slowly appearing from the light and darkness. An inconceivable feeling arose. His figure was pushed back. Even the dragon image of the golden Jian could not resist. He looked at Yu Tong again. He was not in a hurry to push the last tiger-shaped light shadow into the whirlpool. Instead, he formed hand seals again and sent rays of light into the three crystals. Countless strange light shadows were born. Waves of movements that seemed like the groans of heaven and earth were emitted. Gradually, all the light shadows and strange phenomena converged into the three crystals. This, Yi Shixiang asked in a deep voice, this is the legendary Four Spirits sacred body, right? Yu Tong raised his brows. His hands did not stop forming hand seals. Instead, he looked at Yi Shixiang with slight surprise and said, Yin, your knowledge is not bad. You can actually see that this is the Four Spirits sacred body? This time, Yi Shixiang did not deny it. Instead, he asked back, the so-called Four Spirits sacred body is a physical body condensed from the bloodline of the Four Sacred Spirits. Even my Yi clan does not know about this kind of secret technique. It seems like only the people of the immortal world know about it. Yu Tong, where did you come from? At this point, Yi Yaotian, who had transformed into Yi Shixiang, suddenly asked, who exactly are you? Where is Immortal Emissary One? Yu Tong raised his head and laughed loudly. He said, Yi, oh yeah, where could Immortal Emissary One be? He's far away on the horizon, but right in front of you. As he spoke, Yu Tong pointed at the last tiger-shaped light shadow. That light shadow fell into the whirlpool with a dang sound. Then, an enormous suction force actually firmly grabbed Yutong himself. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, tip, and thank you for all forms of support. Thanks to Benben, Xiaohua, Dongfang Yushan, Honghua, Chen Fangoyang, Wuqing, Alun, Jeshin, Li Xiao 777, Little Duan Demonflower, and so on for their tips. Today, I'll add more chapters for you guys. Some of the names of the members were not completely counted. I hope everyone can understand. Also, if nothing unexpected happens, today will be the last time I'll update 10 times in a row before the end of God Cultivation. I hope everyone likes it and cherish it. Chapter 5189. Woo woo. A faint black shadow suddenly emerged from Yutong's forehead, and a human figure the size of a thumb flew out from within. This figure wasn't complete, and it looked scattered. Between each fragment, there were strange distortions, and within each fragment, there were different degrees of dark light trembling. Following the appearance of the human figure, countless bright silver immortal chi emerged from the void, rushing into the shadows like strands of hair. A moment later, a thumb-sized figure flashed with silver light and appeared. Although this figure was very small, the silver light it emitted was so brilliant, and the aura it emitted was so fierce and vast that it actually caused the void to collapse. Your immortal envoy one? Damn it, why didn't this old man think of it? Seeing this aura, Yi Yaotian's entire body went limp. He let out a low cry, wanting to escape, but he couldn't even move a finger. Yi Yaotian, the silver figure said indifferently, this old man is only willing to cooperate with you because you're the head of the Yi family. It's a pity you don't know how to cherish it. If you didn't ruin this old man's plans today, when this old man controls the Dawn Rain continent in the future, it would be the day your Yi family dominates the world. Today, you've truly disappointed this old man. Following the silver figure's words, Yutong's body was also minced, falling into the vortex. At the same time, the Yu family disciple named Yu Insong was left with only an empty shell, flying out with the silver tiger body. Immortal envoy, please spare my life. Immortal envoy, please spare my life. Yi Yaotian couldn't care about anything else, and hurriedly begged, since you need subordinates in the Dawn Rain continent, this junior and my Yi family disciple are willing to serve Immortal envoy. The human heart. The silver figure said indifferently, why is it always like this? The previous opportunity was right in front of you, but you didn't know how to cherish it. Only now do you know how to regret it. Do you know how many people in this world wish for such an opportunity? As he spoke, the silver tiger's crystal flew to the same place as the flame dragon's crystal. Whoosh! 4 bursts of innate bloodline power surged out of the 4 crystals at the same time, spreading in all directions. Of course, the bloodline power only spread out for several kilometers before sweeping violently and crashing into the center of the 4 crystals like a myriad of streams returning to their origin. Pong! The bloodline powers collided, and a deep sound was heard. After this sound, the 4 bloodline powers merged into one place, piercing deep into the void. Ka-ka-ka-ka. The continuous sound pierced through layer after layer of void, and finally piercing into an unknown place. Then the aura of the ice phoenix and vermilion bird's crystals, ants, the darkness and coldness and darkness. At the same time, the heat and light of the flame dragon's and silver tiger's light also turned into a light curtain, and the aura's aura. At the same time, the heat and light of the flame dragon and silver tiger's aura. Haha. The silver figure saw a spot of blood appear where the light and shadow fell, and laughed wildly. He waved his hands, and the 2 rays of light that were entangling the 4 crystals were instantly filled with blood-red light. They pierced straight into the light, and his body swayed, about to fall into it. Rumble, rumble, rumble. At this time, the space that was sealed by the 4 spirits' blood curse was suddenly broken apart by thunder. Yi Yaotian, who didn't know what was happening outside, suddenly heard the sound of thunder from outside the blood curse. At this moment, a divine sense as vast as the heavens came from the distance. After sweeping through the 4 spirits' blood curse, a burst of incomparable anger came from the divine sense. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The seemingly indestructible seal was instantly shattered by the divine sense. The 4 crystals that were about to fuse together began to tremble and began to fall. Damn it! The silver figure was shocked and he roared, "Luo Xingtian, you dare to break this daddies? No, you're not Luo Xingtian. You actually have the strength of a great saint of the demon race?" Following the silver figure's shocked roar, a voice louder than thunder came, "Damn it! How dare you!" Following that, a tall and thin cultivator streaked across the sky faster than lightning and instantly landed on the 4 spirits' blood curse. This cultivator's phoenix eyes were slanted, and those starry eyes were filled with anger. Xiaohua. The silver figure was inexplicably shocked and shouted in disbelief. Yan also cried out, "Spiritual Master Xiao? You're not dead yet?" Unfortunately, Xiaohua's gaze was fixed on Fairy Hongxia, who was sealed in the crystal, and completely ignored their shock. The silver figure suddenly understood something, and without any hesitation his body swayed, and a silver light flashed, and he immediately disappeared from the spot. He had been killed by the great saint of the demon race and the celestial envoy's human form. How could he not know the power of the great saint of the demon race? The moment the silver figure disappeared, Xiaohua laughed coldly and said, "If I don't kill you, how can I dare to see Fairy Hongxia?" After saying that, Xiaohua waved his hand and took out the sword gourd. Following the activation of the spirit-slaying vital light, a black and white ray of light shot out from the sword gourd and directly into the void. The void was torn apart, and pieces of it collapsed. The black and white ray of light blocked the void, and the already disappeared silver figure appeared from the void. Seeing the silver figure appear, within the black and white ray of light, the spirit-slaying vital light split into 2 colors, yin and yang, and ferociously rushed forward. Wherever the yin and yang light passed, everything was destroyed. Regardless of whether it was the collapsed void or the spiritual pressure of the silver figure, nothing could stop it. Pooh! With a soft sound, the spirit-slaying vital light landed on the head of the panicking silver figure. As if in pain, a tiger's roar came from the silver figure, and a silver light like a white tiger appeared from the silver figure's head, blocking the spirit-slaying vital light. Ah, spirit! Spirit-slaying vital light? How can there be spirit-slaying vital light in the Dawn Rain continent? The silver figure was shocked and shouted in disbelief. Xiaohua looked at the silver figure and the tiger-shaped silver light, and couldn't help but think of the immortal messenger with the surname Xin and Fire Phoenix King's words. He raised his hand and stopped the spirit-slaying vital light and asked, "Is your surname Wen?" The silver figure heard and quickly nodded. "This old man is Immortal Messenger Wen." Xiaohua nodded and said, "Since it's like this, you can die." With that, Xiaohua used his hand to point again. Pooh! With a soft sound, the spirit-slaying vital light slightly trembled and pierced through the tiger-shaped silver light and deeply pierced into the immortal human figure. How is this possible? The silver figure shouted, and then no longer made any sound. And Xiaohua raised his hand, and a dark green crystal light landed between the silver figure's eyebrows. You came at the right time." At this time, a sound came from the sky, and sunlight scattered everywhere. The void was torn, and Huang Tong flew out. He saw the dim silver figure wave his hand, and threw a few people into the air. He spread his wings and landed, and protected Xiaohua. He shouted, "I have worked so hard for so long, no one can fight with I for this great tonic." Xiaohua's face was like frost, and he retracted his finger. With the spirit-slaying vital light in the sword gourd intersecting, the dim silver figure's head fell from the silver light, as if the real head was killed by the spirit-slaying vital light. Seeing the silver figure being destroyed, Huang Tong, who was guarding at the side, opened his mouth, and the tiger-shaped silver light was immediately swallowed by him. Rays of silver light seeped out of his body. His demon body swelled uncontrollably. Countless stars and moon powers appeared in the void around him. However, it only lasted for a moment before Huang Tong flapped her wings. The power of the stars and moon disappeared, and all the strange phenomena disappeared. Why did you bring them here? Xiaohua looked at the 3 people brought by Huang Tong and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Didn't you go to imprison Dong Shanyi? Huang Tong shrugged and smiled. I was going to return to the Imperial Thunder sect after imprisoning Dong Shanyi, but on the way back, I heard that the Fortune Gate was coming to the Sky Patrol City to stop the marriage between Fairy Hong Xia and the Yi clan. I knew that if you were not in the Sky Patrol City, you must be on your way here, so I came directly to the Sky Patrol City. On the way here, I met the 3 of them who were also rushing to the Sky Patrol City, so I brought them here. Oh, also, thanks to your help, I don't want to talk about the excitement on the way here. The Fortune Gate's name has spread across the entire Dawn Rain continent. Almost all the sect masters of the so-called 3 kingdoms of cultivation have brought their disciples here. Xiaohua's lips curled into a sneer, and he looked at the distant horizon and said, they should be here. The Dawn Rain continent is no longer under their control. If they don't come, they will be kicked out of this continent. Taoist Master Xiao. A timid and anxious voice urged, Hong Xia is she okay? This voice naturally belonged to Wuxia. Since Wuxia had appeared, how could Li Zongbao not come? Li Zongbao nodded at Xiaohua and did not urge him. He knew that Xiaohua had a sense of propriety, and Xiaohua was more anxious than Wuxia. Greetings, Taoist Master Xiao. After Yi Yin respectfully bowed to Xiaohua, his gaze fell on Yun, who was beside him, who was in a daze. Taoist Kai, don't worry. Xiaohua said to Wuxia, this is a demonic formation to achieve the 4 spirits' sacred body, and it is mixed with immortal spiritual energy. Although I already know the method to break the formation, it involves the lives of 3 people, so I still need to think carefully. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, cast a monthly vote, cast a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Thanks to Benbin, Xiaohua, Dongfang Yushan, Honghua, Chen Fangoyang, Wu Qing, Alun, Jeshin, Li Shao 777, Little Duan Demonflower, and so on for their rewards. Today, I will update for you, but some of the names of the people are not fully recorded. I hope everyone can understand. Also, if there are no accidents, today is the last update before the end of the Cultivation God. I hope everyone likes it and cherish it.